Chapter 1201. Since they planned to take a look at the House of Treasures auction house tonight, Mo Yin instructed someone to pay a fee and book a private room early in the morning. For the sake of keeping a low profile, they didn't use the best private room and found an ordinary one. Just as they moved into the private room and sat down, the door was kicked open forcefully. A fan opened with a swish, and a handsome face brimming with smiles suddenly peeked out from the side of the door. Mo Yin involuntarily rolled her eyes when she saw this. "You guys are too much. You only cared about playing by yourself when you had something fun and didn't call us along." Duan Yu walked in huffing and puffing. Behind him were Situ Yi, Daybreak Sex Liang Qingqing, and Shang Cohen. Arbor was a bit surprised, and he stood up. "Senior brother Situ, senior sister Liang, little junior sister. When did senior sister Liang come?" "After coming out of the Mystic Beast Forest, we were delayed for a few days on the road, so we only arrived last night." Liang Qingqing laughed heartily and patted Arbor's shoulder. "Little junior sister, I haven't had the time to congratulate you. After obtaining the Phoenix Egg, your strength increased by a large margin again. Senior sister, it's not as exaggerated as you say. It's just a small improvement." Arbor shook his head with a serious expression. When Shang Cohen heard this, he involuntarily rolled his eyes inwardly. This child's advancement was like drinking and eating. What small improvement? In any case, with his current strength, he had long been unable to discern this child's cultivation realm. "Hey, my little junior sister, I've already heard that you broke through to become a level 14 mystic cultivator at such a young age. This isn't a small improvement." Liang Qingqing laughed heartily as she pulled Arbor's hand and sat down on the side. She pointed at the men and took the lead. "Hey, what are you guys spacing out for? Sit. Situ Yi glanced at her speechlessly before sitting down and saying with a smile, "Prince Mo, we've truly disturbed you today. This House of Treasures auction house has been spreading news everywhere these past 2 days that 2 supreme-grade treasures will be auctioned at the auction house. One is that prolongation pill, and the other is said to be a space ring. This is really rare. Everyone is here for this spatial ring." Yes, I also want to see how many items this spatial ring can store. If it's good, I'll fight with them for it. Spatial rings have different sizes too, Mo Yin said indifferently. According to the ability of the spiritual equipment master, the spatial rings forged will naturally be different. Duan Yu folded his slender legs and swayed them frivolously. "We mystic cultivators have our own inner worlds, so why would we need a spatial ring? These are all worldly possessions. Don't you agree, Jojo?" Arbor nodded. She had a storage talisman, so why would she need a space ring? Those were indeed worldly possessions. As for the prolongation pill, it was concocted from the high-rank prolongation grass, which was a grade higher than the intermediate-rank prolongation pill. However, it wasn't of much use to Qiaomu. She even had a longevity tree, so she was only waiting for it to bloom and bear fruit. The effects of a single longevity fruit were many times greater than that of any longevity pill or prolongation pill. "Benefactress, I'm hungry. Didn't you just eat dinner?" Xiao Sun raised a small hand and rubbed the little monk's head hard. The little monk hurriedly pushed his hand away and used his fingers to scratch his bald head. With a serious expression, he said, "I'm hungry." As he spoke, he even rubbed his belly with his small hand and looked eagerly at Arbor. Chapter 1202. If they were gluttonous, then they were gluttonous. What hungry? Arbor took out some pastries and fruits from her inner world and stuffed those 3 little foodies' mouths. Afterwards, she stood up and walked to the window to look down. At this time, the venue below was already filled with people. This House of Treasures auction was packed with people, and many high officials and nobles had come. At this time, an enchanting female attendant knocked on the door and walked in. When her gaze swept over the several outstanding men in the private room, her eyes involuntarily brightened. She walked up with her belly exposed and swayed her body. The female attendant handed a thin booklet to Mo Yin and said coquettishly, "Young sirs, these are the items for tonight's auction. Please take a look." Mo Yin didn't reach out to take the booklet, so Hui Feng stepped in front of the woman first and waved his hand in annoyance. "Got it. Just leave the booklet on the table. You can leave. That woman angrily stomped her feet and placed the booklet on a small table on the side. She turned around and threw a coquettish glance at Duan Yu and Sidu. The latter both averted their gazes, feeling that it stung their eyes. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, the woman stomped out again. When she closed the door, she heard an icy yet crisp voice say, "Is there something wrong with that person's eyes?" The woman's foot slipped, and she almost fell to the ground. Arbor was puzzled. She only saw that woman blinking madly at Mo Yin and Duan Yu from the moment she walked into the exit. What was it if there wasn't something wrong with her? Liang Qingqing sputtered with laughter when she heard this. She hooked her arm around Arbor's shoulder and said with a chuckle, Right, there's something wrong with her eyes." Situ, he couldn't help but glance at Prince Mo sympathetically. Their little junior sister hasn't been enlightened yet. Prince Mo's path is long and arduous. As Liang Qingqing spoke, she reached out to take that thin booklet and flipped to the first page. She couldn't help but snicker. "Oh, this auction house is a bit interesting. Look, it says here that the first auction item is an unexpected item." What could this unexpected item be? Could it be a phoenix egg? Ha ha ha. Liang Qingqing joked and couldn't help but laugh. If this house of treasures had a phoenix egg for auction, it wouldn't have caused such commotion. Who knows how big of a fuss it will cause that the whole world will know. Duan Yu shook his head. Something unexpected. Arbor blinked and looked out the window. The auction hall instantly quieted down. A middle-aged auctioneer walked onto the stage with a chuckle, and a few strong men pushed an iron cage out. The iron cage was covered with a red cloth, temporarily blocking everyone's sight. The crowd below the stage began a clamor, each voice louder than the last. "It can't be some giant Xian beast, right? That's really not a common sight. Xian beasts and whatnot are of no use to ordinary people like us. Take off the red cloth. Take it off." The incessant jeering and shouting also attracted Duan Yu and Situ Yi's attention to the window as they looked down. One auction house. They're making quite a big fuss. Could this first auction item really be some kind of Xian beast? Liang Qingqing asked with a wink. At this time, an enchanting girl walked onto the stage with a red card in hand. The card said, "The first auction item is an unexpected item." Everyone's curiosity was piqued, and they hurriedly shouted, "Let's start." Chapter 1203. Don't keep us in suspense. Take off the red cloth. Let this lord see what kind of unexpected item it is. Everyone be quiet. The auctioneer smiled as he raised his hands and pressed down slightly, making a quiet gesture. Tonight, the House of Treasures auction begins. Clang. After the gong sounded, the atmosphere in the hall was pushed to a boiling point. The first auction item, an unexpected item. The auctioneer maintained a mysterious smile and said, "Everyone can first guess what is inside the cage." "Stop guessing. Hurry up and take off the red cloth." Not guessing. Your father bid 100 cultivation coins." Before the auction started, someone had already bid, which immediately attracted many people's attention and was accompanied by roars of laughter. "You brat, aren't you afraid that the cage is filled with bird shit? When the time comes, you'll spend 100 cultivation coins to buy a piece of bird shit." Ha 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 ha. Everyone roared with laughter. "This lord will also accept bird shit." That person thickened his neck and roared. "Who asked this lord to be rich? Oh my, 100 cultivation coins and you're pretending to be a lord here. Then I'll bid 200. 200 cultivation coins. I'll let you call me father." Ha ha. All kinds of laughter filled the hall. The auctioneer pressed his hands down and maintained a mysterious smile as he said, "Everyone be quiet for a moment. I will explain the details of the first auction item. The starting price of the first auction item is 1,000 cultivation coins. Every increment must be 100. There is no upper limit. We can begin now," the auctioneer said with a smile. "You're not going to take off the red cloth?" someone questioned. The auctioneer shook his head. "Not taking it off. It won't be too late to take off the red cloth after someone bids." Everyone, why did it feel so unreliable? If they didn't take off the red cloth, who would know what was inside? What if it was really like what others said, that there was bird shit inside? Then wouldn't the cultivation coins be wasted? In a moment, The originally noisy atmosphere in the hall quieted down. 1,000 cultivation coins was not a small amount. 1,000 cultivation coins could buy a lot of food. They still had to consider it. At this time, a fat-bellied landlord raised his hand. 1,000 cultivation coins. I request to see what is under the red cloth now. Tyrant. Everyone shifted their gaze to the landlord, their faces full of worship. That person immediately stuck out his fat belly and waved his hand with a smile. Now you can take off the red cloth. He was just curious about what was under the red cloth. Of course. The auctioneer immediately nodded. His fingers slid, and the two brawny men standing beside the iron cage immediately understood and lifted the red cloth. Wow! Everyone was in an uproar. There wasn't any giant Xian beast in the cage. There was only a naked woman curled up into a ball. After the uproar, everyone looked disappointed. Sure enough, this unexpected item was just a gimmick used to cheat money. How could a woman with a frail figure be worth 1,000 cultivation coins? But the landlord was smiling and nodding repeatedly. Good, not bad, not bad. Although the woman was curled up, he could see that her skin was smooth and her small face was pretty good looking. This 1,000 cultivation coins was worth it. He could just treat it as getting himself a concubine. The landlord laughed, expecting that no one would fight over a female slave with him. He sat there complacently, thinking that the first auction item was his. Chapter 1204. At this time, the auctioneer had already transformed into a procuress. His words were sharp and shrewd, as he spared no effort in promoting the woman in the cage. Everyone, don't look at her extremely delicate appearance. In reality, she's a level 4 mystic cultivator. But don't worry, everyone. Her mystic energy has already been controlled by the drug and can't be used. Think about it. A powerful mystic cultivator woman submitting at your feet. This feeling isn't bad, right? The reason why a procuress could become a procuress was that she was old, pretty, and greedy enough. This auctioneer was not to be outdone at this time. After his incitement, some of the people who weren't very interested originally started to raise the price and follow the trend. The fat-bellied landlord's expression started to darken. To be able to become a mystic cultivator, this woman's physical constitution is naturally much higher than normal women's. The auctioneer smiled vulgarly and vigorously promoted again. You don't have to worry about breaking her after buying her, right? It's definitely worth more than what it's worth. Liang Qingqing slapped the small table and abruptly stood up. Preposterous. Junior sister Liang, wait. Duan Yu called out to her. On the side, Situ Yi stared straight at that large iron cage with a strange expression. The atmosphere in the auction hall had already been thoroughly stirred up by this vulgar auctioneer. The auctioneer went up to slap that iron cage and loudly stimulated everyone's nerves. He shouted excitedly, "Now, is there anyone else who wants to bid? People who want to bid need to be quick. Our first auction items auction is about to end." The woman in the cage raised her furious gaze and glared fiercely at that auctioneer. Her gaze that resembled a wolf cub didn't have any power and even strangely carried a hint of flirtatiousness, causing the beasts in the hall to howl and drool as they continuously raised the price. "Hey, I want this little beauty. I'll bid 2,000 mystic currency. I'll bid 3,000. 3,500. The fat-bellied landlord's face completely darkened. 5,000. Situ Yi suddenly walked to the window and made a bid. Everyone in the room shifted their gazes to him one after another, their eyes filled with disbelief. "Oh my, room number 8 bid 5,000. Is there anyone who bids higher than room number 8? If there isn't, then it's a deal." The shining 5,000 cultivation coins were about to be in his hands, and he could get quite a bit of commission from it. The auctioneer was grinning from ear to ear. 5,000 going once, 5,000. 6,000. The fat-bellied landlord angrily roared. Originally, he could have bought the concubine for 1,000, but now the price had increased to 6,000. He was really angry. 10,000. Situ Yi coldly reported a number. Everyone in the private room looked at him with a strange expression. This Situ, you shouldn't have done this. Cough, cough, cough. Duan Yu coughed lightly and asked, Situ-e, are you lacking women? Situ-e glanced at him and said coldly with a frown, she's Junior Marshall's sister Lu. Little Junior's sister should recognize him. Everyone turned to look at Arbor. Arbor nodded in agreement. Come to think of it, Lu Yexin had fought with her when she was 7 years old. Oh no, she had beaten her up? It was at Quoto Village's gathering square. She had ruthlessly beaten her up. Arbor had already forgotten that she had beaten Lu Yexin up more than once. She had even beaten her up a second time at the inn. Strange, how did Lu Yexin end up in this state? Chapter 1205. Situ-e sighed and said, Little Junior sister, do you still remember Qinghe Town? Arbor nodded. Of course she remembered. That was where she first met the 7 fairies of the Holy Water Sect. When she thought of this, her eyes dimmed a bit, and Mo Yin reached out to hold her small hand to comfort her. She looked up at Situ-e and asked, Is it related to this matter? It's related. Situ-e nodded. That time, because of Junior sister Lu's willfulness, we lost Senior Brother Wang. After we returned to the sect, all the brothers couldn't forgive her. So Junior sister Lu left the sect and went out to train by herself. Situ-e sighed again. After that, we never saw her again. Then this time, they actually met here? This truly surprised Situ-e. Arbor was in the know, and she also remembered Senior Brother Wang's matter. Senior Marshal Brother Wang had promised her that he would stay in Qinghe Town by himself after dealing with the matters in the town. After they left, Senior Brother Wang probably chose to commit suicide by himself. No wonder everyone in the Heavenly Dao sect was unwilling to forgive Lu Yexin. They all blamed her. Because of her willfulness and mistakes, Senior Brother Wang was scratched by zombies and had no choice but to commit suicide. How could they forgive her? At the mention of Qinghe Town, Shan Kuan also felt lingering fear. They had sacrificed too many teammates in that operation, and many of them didn't make it back from Qinghe Town. Although their gains in the end weren't bad, they still felt uncomfortable every time they thought of such a great sacrifice. After that operation in Qinghe Town, Lu Yexin left the Heavenly Dao sect and went out to train until now. Arbor couldn't help but be astonished. She didn't expect such a delicate little girl like Lu Yexin to have the courage to carry a bundle and leave the sect at that time. Without the sect protection, she was only a minor level 2 mystic cultivator back then. Going out to train really wasn't enough. In that case, she had left the Heavenly Dao sect for about 7 to 8 years. That auctioneer said she was now a level 4 mystic cultivator, so it could be seen that her constitution wasn't that great. No matter what, she's been offended all these years. It's enough to make up for the mistakes she made in the past. Situ-e calmly muttered, She is a disciple of my Heavenly Dao sect. I must save her. Senior Brother Situ is right, Liang Qingqing said with a nod. This group of people actually dared to treat mystic cultivator women as playthings and auction them off for entertainment. It's inexcusable. After Situ-e quoted the price of 10,000 cultivation coins, the fat-bellied landlord stopped. Everyone in the auction house looked at each other, as if they did not expect that this girl could be auctioned for the sky-high price of 10,000 cultivation coins. One must know that in this auction house, the prices were based on high-grade profound coins. 10,000 mystic coins were equivalent to 10 pieces of high-grade magnetite. Back then, the beautifying pill that Arbor had tampered with was auctioned for 103 pieces of high-grade magnetite. In everyone's eyes, this was a high price spouted by a nouveau riche who wanted to save face. The auctioneer was also very satisfied. When he thought of the commission that was about to enter his pocket, he grinned so widely that he couldn't close his mouth. After striking the small hammer 3 times, he loudly announced, 10,000 mystic coins. The guest in private room 8 has obtained the first auction item. It will be delivered to the guest immediately. Chapter 1206. Arbor looked up. Senior Brother Situ, you're really paying. Situ-e couldn't help but be amused. What else? Of course, it's to bring Lu Yexin back without spending a single cent. Arbor pursed her lips. When Duan Yu heard this, He immediately felt that the little fellow was implying something. Speak, speak. What good idea did you come up with? This House of Treasures auction house opened in the Mo Kingdom capital in order to snatch business from my morning sunlight pavilion. Arbor leisurely took out several talismans and distributed them to everyone. Stick on invisibility talismans, go to their treasury, and take away all the goods. What do you think? Isn't it fun? Everyone looked at each other, speechless for a moment. Xiao Lin abruptly jumped up and clapped her hands with a chuckle. Fun, fun, fun. Sister, I also want to go. Arbor nodded. Then we'll be leaving 2 people here. The little monk shook his head while holding a teacup. Benefactress, what you're doing is wrong. Then are you going or not? The little monk nodded vigorously. I'm going. Everyone's mouths twitched. This monk was too lacking in moral integrity. Jojo, I'll go with you. Duan Yu quickly took out an invisibility talisman and stuck it on himself. Can you see me? Senior brother Duan Yu. Senior brother Duan Yu, where are you? Liang Qingqing called out. Duan Yu's voice came from beside her. Stop pretending. You can clearly see me. Liang Qingqing laughed heartily. At this time, the private room's door was pulled open, and the female attendant wiggled inside. When she saw that Situ, he was the only young and handsome gentleman left in the private room, she couldn't resist sticking to him. This young sir, I brought that female slave over for you. Liu Yexin was wearing a piece of clothing and was being escorted inside by 2 brawny men. She was struggling nonstop, and her beautiful eyes angrily glared forward. When they suddenly landed on Situ Yi, she couldn't help but be startled. Those 2 brawny men impatiently pushed her into the private room and politely cupped their hands at everyone before swiftly retreating. The enchanting female attendant still wanted to tease Situ Yi, but after being swept by Situ Yi's gaze, she couldn't help but purse her lips and walk out with a twist of her body. When she stepped out of the door, she was slightly stunned and turned her head to look around. When the door closed behind her, the waitress thought that she was overthinking things. She cursed Situ Yi for being unromantic and walked away with a twist of her body. Outside the door, Arbor, Mo Yin, Duan Yu, and the 3 little radishes stood in a row. Unfortunately, they were covered in invisibility talismans, so mystic cultivators level 14 and below could not see them. Just now, Xiao Mu had already asked Mo Yin to use her divine perception to sense the crowd. In this auction house, there wasn't a single person whose cultivation was higher than level 14, so that at this moment they were simply strutting around the House of Treasures. As long as they avoided bumping into other people when they brushed past them, no one would notice them. Arbor waved at everyone, and they swiftly went up to the 3rd floor. The 2 brawny dark-faced men guarding the staircase looked straight ahead and puffed out their chests with their heads held high. When our dear Xiao son walked past them, he even shook his little butt at them and made a face. 2 big idiots. Everyone snickered inwardly. They walked up the stairs so ostentatiously, but the 2 idiots didn't see them. It was clear how stupid they were. Arbor gestured at everyone, and they quickly walked to the door of the House of Treasures' large storeroom. Chapter 12:07. 2 valiant and spirited guards were also standing at the entrance to the storeroom. Just as Arbor moved, Mo Lien held her small hand and stood still against the wall. A group of people, big and small, stood still against the wall, looking at a middle-aged man in a brocade robe who was slightly plump, walking past them. The middle-aged man coughed when he felt a chill on his neck, so he turned around to take a look. The corridor on the 3rd floor was completely empty. The 2 guards were standing guard at the stairway, so it was impossible for them to let even a fly up. Today is our House of Treasures' first auction. Guard it well, and don't let unrelated people come over. After instructing the 2 guards, he headed towards his lounge. After he left, Arbor waved the talisman in her hand and stuck it on her body. With a whoosh, she entered the storeroom from outside. With a wall-traversing talisman in hand, robbing houses was a cinch. When she turned to look, she saw that Mo Lien and the others had also transmigrated over. Our dear Qiao Sen's face was flushed with excitement. If it weren't for the fact that his sister didn't allow him to speak, he would be wishing for nothing more than to clap and laugh heartily. Duan Yu stifled a chuckle as he looked around. It had to be said that this house of treasures stored quite a lot of good goods. Boxes of different sizes were placed on the dozen or so treasure shelves. There were miracle pills, cultivation techniques, mystic techniques, and many mystic weapons. Our dear Xiao, son, opened a box and took out a small black rod. He pressed both hands on the rod, and that rod sprang open and elongated. It really suited his small body quite well when he held it in his hand. Confiscated, Xiao's son naturally stuffed the stick into his storage talisman, and then began to pick and choose the things on the shelf. On the other hand, Xiao Lin flipped through the cultivation techniques and mystic techniques one by one. She stuffed the useful ones into the storage talisman and tossed the useless ones aside for the time being. The little monk silently chanted Amit Ba as he circled around the grain storage in the corner, diligently putting away the bags of grain into the storage talisman. When Arbor saw these three little fellows, she couldn't help but want to laugh. Emol Yen leaned closer to her and whispered, "This robbery is clearly a family heirloom." Duan Yu walked around the storeroom and searched for some items before walking over. "I'm done choosing. Don't let the rest go to waste. Although they're all junk, it's better to bring them back and distribute them to your family." Xiao Mu waved her small hand as she pointed at the remaining cultivation techniques, mystic weapons, and pills. She looked down on these broken things and only took away about 5 million cultivation coins and nothing else. Duan Yu waved his hand. "The Duan family is rich and doesn't need these things. Take them all." TSK, he couldn't be bothered to bring anything back for the Duan clan. Those fools from the Duan clan weren't even worthy of scrap metal. Arbor knew that he had a grudge with the Duan family, so he glanced at him and didn't say anything. He pulled Emollien's hand and said, "Take these away." Anyway, there were many people in the Hidden Night Pavilion, so they wouldn't complain about having too many things. Emollien nodded and took out a new storage talisman to clean up the remaining items. He only picked some slightly rare forging materials and didn't take anything else. Arbor tilted her small head and seemed to have thought of something. She took out a brocade pouch from her inner world and handed it to Emollien. "Lien, this is for you. I snatched it from Sikong Fulling." Emollien's hand paused as she took the brocade pouch, and the corner of her mouth imperceptibly twitched as she asked, "You really know Sikong Fulling?" Chapter 1208. When Arbor heard the hidden meaning in his words, she couldn't help but blink. I know her. This treasure is something that I snatched from Sikong Fulling." She was furious at the time. She wanted nothing more than to tear me apart. Right now, they were enemies. Duan Yu looked at Arbor exasperatedly. "You robbed her, so of course she was angry." Arbor puffed up her cheeks. "It's useless for her to have it. Lien, take a look and see if it's useful." It was only then that Emollien looked down at the item inside the bag, and her phoenix eyes brightened. "Glacial star sand. It's useful, right? It's useful, it's useful." This was an indispensable ingredient for forging a divine weapon. "Jojo, you're so awesome." Emollien lifted the little fellow up at once, and the little fellow's cheers were covered in her palms. "Shoo, softer, softer." Arbor glanced outside the wall. There were still 2 idiot guards standing guard there, sticking to the wall without moving like door gods. Emollien stifled a chuckle and pulled down her hand. "Jojo, you're still missing one essential ingredient. Then I can help you reforge the ferrule into a divine weapon." "You're a divine weapon master?" Duan Yu nearly exclaimed. Seeing that the little fellow was about to pounce over to cover his mouth out of reflex, Emollien reacted quickly and covered Duan Yu's mouth with a backhand. "Softer." Arbor glared at him. "What? Very surprised and pleasantly surprised, right?" Emollien put down her hand and directly wiped Duan Yu's back. She harumphed and said, "I'm a rare divine weapon master." "Bullshit." Duan Yu rolled his eyes at her and grumbled, "I'm also a rare concealed weapons master." Arbor covered her mouth with one hand, and a vivid and bright smile suddenly appeared on her stoic face. The two were instantly stupefied as they stared at her without blinking. They muttered, "Smile, smile. The two of you aren't as strong as my sister." My sister is a talisman grandmaster. Xiao Sun had squatted down at their feet and raised his little head as he muttered, Yes, yes, yes. My sister is awesome. My sister is the best. Jolin nodded repeatedly. He helped the little monk tidy up the food in the corner. When he saw any good fruits, he would stuff a few of them into his storage talisman. The little monk was so anxious that he rushed over to snatch them. Xiao Lin smacked her bald little head. Don't snatch it. Leave some for big sister. You guys take it. Xiao Mu gazed at the 3 little radishes exasperatedly. She did not lack food at all. When Little Tree woke up, the food on Paradise Planet would be enough for her to eat for 10 lifetimes. Sister, here's a strange little box. I don't know what it's for. Jolin threw a box the size of a fist to Arbor. When Xiao Mu opened it, she saw that it was an unknown small seed. This, I've never seen it either. This should be a tree seed. Duanyu glanced at it and said, It's probably useless, so throw it away. MHM, it probably isn't anything good since it was thrown in the corner. Jolin nodded and pulled the little monk over. It's all tidied up. Then let's go back to the private room. Everyone went down the stairs grandly according to the way they came and arrived at the door of private room number 8 on the 2nd floor. To give Situ, E, and the others a surprise, they all took out another wall-passing talisman and passed through the wall with a swish with a wicked smile. Senior Brother Situ. Chapter 1209. Situ, he was sitting on a cushioned bench, chatting with Lu Yexin, who had calmed down. He was suddenly interrupted by the little fellow's crisp voice. He hurriedly looked up and smiled at the people who had appeared. You're back. Senior Brother Situ, this is for you. Arbor tossed him a storage talisman, then gave Liang Qingqing one. Seeing that Shang Kun was staring at her, she felt a little embarrassed and reluctantly gave him one too. Heh, thank you, little junior sister. Shang Kun was so happy he almost flew up. Little junior sister was actually quite a nice person after spending some time with her. She was just a little cold on the outside. Wow, so many pills. Liang Qingqing exclaimed. She held the storage talisman and couldn't bear to put it down. Little junior sister, this is the storage talisman you drew yourself, right? Situ didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he put away the storage talisman. He looked at Arbor jokingly and said, Junior sister, this isn't hush money, right? Arbor nodded very seriously. It was hush money. Later, when the people from the House of Treasures realized that their storage room had been emptied, they would definitely make a fuss. Let's stuff their mouths with hush money. Situ, he couldn't help but laugh. Liang Qingqing also laughed out loud. She pounced on Arbor and rubbed her. Little junior sister, you're too cute. Emolian hurriedly pulled Xiao Mu to her side. I won't let you touch her. Lu Yexin sat quietly at the side. Her eyes moved slightly as she looked at Arbor, then lowered again. Hey, Arbor called out to Lu Yexin. Lu Yexin looked up and nodded calmly at Arbor. Little junior sister. Arbor suddenly didn't feel like scolding her anymore. She pulled her up. Go change your clothes. There was a small room at the side. Arbor pushed her in and closed the door. She took out a set of clothes from her inner world and threw it to her. Change. Lu Yexin silently accepted the order. She turned around and quickly changed her clothes. Why is it like this? When I was training, I accidentally fell into an ambush. Lu Yexin lowered her head and said softly. Xiao Mu rolled her eyes at the sky. She strode to her side and poked her forehead with her finger. How did you temper your temperament after 7 to 8 years of experiential training? What happened to the courage you had when you fought against me? What happened to the stubbornness of letting the hyenas eat me? Where'd he go? Lu Yexin looked at her with a bitter smile. I was immature in the past. I've never seen someone as stupid as you. Training yourself on the auction stage. Arbor raised his hand and threw him a round core, ravaging thunder. Hey, don't blame me for not reminding you. There will definitely be trouble later. The boss of this auction house will probably come out. When that time comes, you know what to do. It's up to you whether you want to take revenge or not. After saying this, Arbor felt a little tired and turned to leave. Lu Yexin held the core, ravaging thunder. She lowered her head and bit her lip. Then, she pushed open the door and walked out. The two of them returned to the private room one after the other. Everyone looked at them curiously. Junior Sister Lu, don't think so much. It's quite dangerous for a girl to train alone outside. You should go back to your sect in the future, Liang Qingqing advised. Lu Yexin lowered her head and didn't say anything. There wasn't a day that she didn't want to go back to her sect. She missed her father, but she didn't have the face to go back. Chapter 12:10. Situi sighed and said, "Back then, everyone was young and impetuous. After you left, our senior brothers also regretted it quite a bit. Junior Sister Lu, let's let bygones be bygones. This time, come back to the sect with me. Your father, Home Master Lu, hasn't been in good health these past few years. Don't you want to go back and visit him?" Senior brother. Lu Yexin looked up abruptly. Situ raised his hand and patted her shoulder. "All right, it's decided then," Liang Qingqing said with a smile. "That's right. We're all senior brothers of the same sect, so what can't we talk about openly? Junior Sister Lu, if you want to gain experience, there will be plenty of opportunities when the sect goes out for training in the future." "Thank you, Senior Sister Liang." Lu Yexin nodded and looked at Situ. Senior brother Situ, I'll listen to you." Situ smiled and turned to look at Arbor. "Little junior sister, you didn't know when you were gone. This auction house consecutively auctioned off quite a few decent pills. The next auction item is that prolongation pill. Prolongation pills are indeed good stuff. They're also useful for us cultivators." Liang Qingqing nodded with a smile. The little fellow pursed her lips disinterestedly. Seeing this, Duan Yu said with a chuckle, "Our Jojo doesn't fancy it. Whoever wants to bid can bid for it." Liang Qingqing couldn't help but beam when she recalled that the storage talisman little junior sister casually tossed her earlier contained a lot of spirit pills and elixirs. That's true. Prolongation pills are quite precious to other people, but they probably don't have much use for our little junior sister. That's right. Useless things were all called scrap metal in Arbor's eyes. While they were chatting, the gong started again below. This time, the auctioneer gave an extravagant explanation of the prolongation pill's wondrous effects for a while. He could hear the hot-blooded cries of the idiots below. "Hurry and start. What's the starting bid? I have to bid for this prolongation pill." That's right. If I can take this prolongation pill, I might be able to extend my life by a few years. This prolongation pill is effective for mystic cultivators level 15 and below. It's just that the higher the mystic cultivator's level, the lesser the increase in lifespan. Yes, I've heard of it too. Ordinary people like us might be able to increase our lifespan by 10 or 20 years. Dream on. At most, it'll be 10 years. While everyone was discussing enthusiastically, the auctioneer smiled and said, "The starting price is 100,000 cultivation coins. Each bid must not be less than 1,000. When this sentence fell, the enthusiasm of most people was suppressed with a swish. 100,000 cultivation coins. Don't joke around. That was equivalent to 100 pieces of high-grade magnetite. Who could be so rich and overbearing to take out 100 pieces of high-grade magnetite in one go? Only those large aristocratic families or nobles would have that kind of boldness. It was better for them to just sit back and enjoy the show. As for the life-prolonging pill, it was better not to think about it. TSK, it's quite expensive." Liang Qingqing clicked her tongue and said, "It can't be that it won't be sold, right? I think not everyone can afford this price. There are plenty of people who want something like a prolongation pill. Don't worry, it won't be sold," Situ said with a faint chuckle. Sure enough, the moment he said that, a woman's voice sounded from the other end. 100,000. 101,000. Chapter 12:11. Once Arbor called out, everyone inside the private room turned to look at her in unison. Knock, knock. Huifeng opened the door and entered, stepping to the side to let in several attendants who were bringing tea. This time, it was finally not that woman who was blinking her eyes until they were spasming. The two male attendants very courteously served tea to everyone, and after inadvertently glancing at Mo Yin and the others, they quickly retreated out of the room. 105,000, 105,000. Right now, the person from private room number 9 is bidding 105,000. 106,000. Arbor leisurely took out a talisman from her sleeve and slapped it onto Huifeng's hand. This is your share. Everyone's mouths twitched. Emol Yin was exasperated. The crown princess is giving you hush money. Take it. Huifeng was grinning from ear to ear as he repeatedly said, "Thank you, crown princess." With a flash, he closed the door behind him. Jojo, didn't you look down on this prolongation pill? Duan Yu felt that the little fellow's current expression was especially hilarious. Could it be that this child was a prop hired by the House of Treasures? She clearly didn't want this prolongation pill, so why was she blindly raising the price? Arbor glanced at them and explained. The voice of the one who called out the price next door sounded quite familiar. Everyone, what kind of reason was this? The person from private room number 9 was bloody unlucky to have run into you. Emol Yin beckoned her over with a smile. Come and drink some tea. The person from private room number 9 bid again. 110,000 mystic currency. 111,000. Arbor drank a mouthful of tea and leisurely announced the new price. Inside private room number 9, Yin was so angry that her fingernails nearly dug into her flesh. On the side, Suer was even more indignant as she pounded the table. This person is crazy, right? She bids 1,000 more than us every time. She's doing it on purpose. Baoyan watched the show while munching on melon seeds. She couldn't help but grin. I think the House of Treasures must have asked them to do this on purpose to raise the price. The purple-clothed woman blinked her watery eyes and nodded. She said softly, "Yes, I think so too. Miss, why don't you temporarily not buy this life-prolonging pill?" "No." Commandery Princess Ian shook her head solemnly. She was determined to obtain this life-prolonging pill. No one could snatch it from her. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. Baoyan pursed her lips and said, "Miss, let her be. Some people seem to be stubborn." 120,000. Commandery Princess Ian bid. In less than a second, the voice of 121,000 came from the private room next to him. Ian was so infuriated that she abruptly stood up, opened the door, and walked towards the door of room 8 next door. However, before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by the waiter. The waiter smiled and said to her, "Guest, our rules here are that you are not allowed to harass other guests." What a joke. If the customers could discuss and solve the problem, then why would they open their doors for business? Why would they auction? Commandery Princess Ian clenched her fists. That purple-clothed woman also followed her out and said gently, "Miss, don't worry. If you're lacking mystic currency, I still have some here. I can lend it to you to make up the numbers." Commandery Princess Ian only felt her heart ache. Her monthly allowance was not much, only half of the princess's monthly allowance. Normally, she could only look at the items bestowed by the Queen Dowager, but could not sell them. So strictly speaking, she did not have a lot of money on her. This time, the money she could fork out to buy the medicine was at most 150,000. Chapter 12:12. Moreover, she couldn't possibly throw away all of her money for a prolongation pill. She still had to make ends meet. "It's fine, Mrs. Sippy." The purple-clothed woman smiled at her and said, "I still have 30,000 mystic currency here. If you don't have enough, you can use it to make up the number." Commandery Princess and nodded at the purple-clothed woman and thanked her gratefully. Afterwards, she returned to her private room and didn't raise the price by a large margin. Instead, she raised it by 1,000. In the end, the other party was the person from private room number 8. She was here specifically to oppose her. She raised it a bit lower, but the other party started bidding higher. When the price soared all the way to 160,000, the auctioneer was grinning from ear to ear. Commandery Princess Ian was so angry that her fingertips were trembling. She swore that if she found out who this girl was, she would definitely kill her. "Jojo, what if the person from private room number 9 stops bidding? What will you do?" Duan Yu couldn't help but ask in amusement when he saw her cheerfully raising the price. Arbor was slightly taken aback, but then he said unconcernedly, "I have 5 million mystic currency. At most, he would use the House of Treasure's money to buy that prolongation pill that he didn't really need. Duan Yu immediately cast a glance at Emolian, implying, "You gave it to her?" Emolian shook her head and said dryly, "While you were rummaging around for a good item, Jojo put away 5 million mystic currency." Duan Yu at 170,000. Commandery Princess Ian's heart was trembling when she called out this price. She decided that if the other party raised the price again, she wouldn't buy it. Moreover, the price had already soared so high. Even if the other party bought this prolongation pill, it would be an arduous but fruitless endeavor. "Why don't you add? Why don't you add?" Commandery Princess Ian thought viciously. "Raise it to 180,000. I'll laugh at you." "Is that person crying?" Arbor suddenly asked. She could even tell that the girl from private room number 9's voice was trembling when she called out the price, as if she was sobbing. "Then she's definitely crying." Liang Qingqing burst out laughing. A small life-prolonging pill soared all the way to 170,000 cultivation coins. If this were to spread out, no one would believe it. Xiaomu nodded and said, "Then forget it. Let her buy it." Everyone's lips twitched. The auctioneer beamed with joy. 170,000 going once, 170,000 going twice, 170,000 going thrice. Deal. Congratulations to the lady in private room number 9 for obtaining an incomparably precious life prolongation pill. The audience below burst into thunderous shouts. Some people even stood up and applauded excitedly. It was as if they had bought the life prolongation pill. It was hilarious. Arbor glanced out of the window and shook his head. The people down there are like a bunch of fools. Situ E and the others almost choked on their tea. On the other hand, Commandery Princess, who was inside room 9, sat there stiffly, as if she had not heard the auctioneer's words. She was in a daze. 170,000 cultivation coins. 170,000 cultivation coins were equivalent to 170 pieces of high-grade magnetite. She had taken out 170 pieces of high-grade magnetite to buy one prolongation pill. Just one pill. Why did she want to cry? She did not feel any joy at all. For the sake of the Queen Dowager's birthday this time, she had simply put down her hard-earned capital. Commandery Princess Ian sat there in a daze, her heart aching so much that she could barely breathe. Seeing that her miss was so angry that she could not speak, Sewer quickly soothed her. Chapter 12-13. The purple-clothed woman lowered her head, and her mouth twitched imperceptibly. This was quite a scam. Anyone who had spent 170,000 cultivation coins to buy a life-prolonging pill would probably feel the heartache of having to die. Looking at the petrified Commandery Princess Ian beside her, the purple-clothed woman suppressed her mirth and coughed lightly. "Lass, give Miss 20,000 mystic currency." Valian reluctantly took out a large bag of mystic currency from her sleeve and stuffed it into Commandery Princess Ian's hands. Commandery Princess Ian might even feel the pain of breathing. She stared blankly at the bag of 20,000 mystic currency in her hand, feeling that it was very heavy. She had brought a total of 150,000 mystic currency with her when she came out this time. Not only did she spend it all at once, she even borrowed 20,000 mystic currency. She simply wanted to cry, but had no tears, especially when there were knocks on the door, and the auction house's manager, who had a genial smile, personally ran over to deliver the pill to her and even sweet-talked her. She really wanted to yell at that fatty, "I'm not buying it. I don't want to buy it. I'm regretting it, okay?" But it was clear that that fatty was also a shrewd person. He had 2 burly level 10 body cultivators behind him to prevent customers from reneging on their bids. If she said that she wasn't buying it now, it would probably be even more humiliating. If the palace were to spread the rumor that Commandery Princess Ian had bid for a prolongation pill for the Queen Dowager but couldn't afford it, would she still want her face? Would she still want to keep her dignity in front of the Queen Dowager? Honorable guest. The smile on the fatty's face faded a little and turned into a look of suspicion. It couldn't be another customer who had bid but couldn't afford to pay, right? Okay. Commandery Princess Ian's voice was hoarse as she shakily took out a large bag of mystic currency from her inner world. She handed it to the fatty, along with a bag of 20,000 mystic currency that Bao Yin had given her. The fatty nodded with a chuckle. After taking the mystic currency, he placed a prolongation pill on a tray in front of Commandery Princess Yin. Honorable customer, please take care of your prolongation pill. Commandery Princess Yin reached out and shakily picked up a small transparent cup from the tray, taking that pill in her hand. This was the prolongation pill that she had bought for 170,000 mystic currency. The fatty said a few more words of praise. Seeing that she looked like she had suffered a severe blow, he didn't say anything else and waved his hand to instruct the two bodyguards to walk out together. Commandery Princess Yin sat on the chair in a daze as she gazed dejectedly at the sky-high price pill in her hand. All sorts of feelings welled up in her heart. I see there isn't anything else to see in this auction, so why don't we leave now? Commandery Princess Yin also truly did not want to stay in this sad place for too long, so she nodded and glanced at the purple-clothed woman. May I know Miss's name? I will definitely return the 20,000 mystic currency to Miss after a while. My name, Xian. The purple-clothed woman blinked her phoenix eyes and said with a smile, Don't worry, Mississippi. It won't be too late to return it to me when you're more relaxed. My name is Xuan. Miss Xian, Miss Princess. I'll be staying at the biggest inn in the city for the time being. Commandery Princess Yin agreed with a nod. Okay, after I raise the money, I will ask someone to come find you. No need to rush. The Commandery Princess looked at Commandery Princess Yin meaningfully. Miss Xuan, then let's go out now. Okay. Thank you, sister, for your help this time. Commandery Princess Yin was indeed quite grateful to this woman. Chapter 12:14. She had become a pitiful pauper overnight. Commandery Princess Yin took a deep breath and put away that precious pill before forcing a smile at the purple-clothed woman. Just as the two people stepped out of the private room one after the other, they heard a furious bellow. Close the door. No one is allowed to leave this place. The people chatting and drinking tea in private room number 8 exchanged glances with each other. It's here. The show is here. The auction item was pushed off the auction stage. The onlookers below stared dumbfoundedly at the middle-aged fatty who had suddenly scuttled onto the auction stage with a bellow. What's going on? Who knows? The middle-aged fatty was the person in charge who had just plundered the 150,000 mystic currency from Commandery Princess Yin and was planning to deposit it in the storehouse. Who knew that when he opened the storehouse on the 3rd floor, he would be instantly stupefied. The entire storehouse had been swept clean, not even leaving behind a grain shell for him. His vision darkened, and he nearly fell to the ground. When he regained his wits, he quickly issued an injunction to close the House of Treasure's main door. A group of ferocious guards of the House of Treasures surrounded the entire hall, trapping everyone within. The doors to the private rooms on the 2nd floor were knocked open one by one, and the guards politely yet unyieldingly drove the guests downstairs to gather at the auction venue on the 1st floor. The purple-clothed woman, Xian and Commandery Princess Yian's group were no exception. Commandery Princess Yian's face had stiffened from anger, and she couldn't resist lashing out. Why are you forcefully keeping us here? She didn't even want to stay in this auction house for a second longer. Her heart ached so much that she was about to suffocate. Xian quickly consoled Commandery Princess Yin. Miss Xuan, don't be angry. Let's follow them down and see what's going on first. Inside private room number 8, a brawny man cupped his hands at Mo Yin and company. Everyone, please. The House of Treasure senior manager invites everyone to come downstairs for a chat. Your auction house is rather interesting. Liang Qingqing mocked with crossed arms. You actually drove the guests out of the private rooms halfway through the auction? What are you trying to do? Can't you just openly rob us? The burly guard rolled his eyes and politely and unyieldingly said, This is the head shopkeeper's order. Please don't make things difficult for a small guard like me. All right, since this is someone else's rule, let's go down and take a look. Situ, he stood up first, pretending that nothing had happened and walked out of the door. The group of people followed him downstairs. When they reached the second floor, they just so happened to bump into Commandery Princess In and the others. Commandery Princess In looked at Mo Lien in a daze. Your Highness, Your Highness? Previously, when Su was at the entrance of the House of Treasures, she said that she seemed to have seen His Highness figure. She didn't expect His Highness to really come. Duan Yu was originally walking with a grin on his face, but when his gaze landed on Bao Yin, who had shrunk back, his peach blossom eyes involuntarily narrowed. He pointed his folding fan at Bao Yin and questioned, "Why are you here? Where's your young master?" Bao Yin shrank towards the purple-clothed woman. Xinu. Her stretched out her arm to block Bao Yin's path. She squinted her eyes and pretended to be puzzled as she asked softly, "Everyone, do you know our Beijing manners, young master?" Duan Yu raised his eyebrows at her and said with a toothy grin, "Not only do I know him, I even beat him up before. However, that punk escaped quickly, allowing him to avoid a calamity. Young master is naturally playful. If he has offended you in any way, please forgive him. My crown prince consort is a firecracker." Chapter 12:15. The purple-clothed woman quickly curtsied in a very standard manner. Every grievance had its perpetrator, and every debt its debtor. They were looking for Beijing manners, young master, so they couldn't be bothered to make things difficult for a frail woman. Duan Yu merely glanced at her before retracting his gaze and walking downstairs with Situ and company. Ian originally wanted to say a few more words to Mo Lien, but when she saw that he didn't even glance in her direction, she could only stand resentfully on the side and watch as the crown prince walked past her while holding his wifey's hand. She seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly changed. Wait. Seeing that the crown prince and company were ignoring her, Commandery Princess In quickly caught up and shouted, "Crown Princess, just now, was it you? Was it you who bid?" She had clearly seen the crown prince consorts group walk out of private room number 8 just now. Fuck, the crown princess was the woman who had tricked her. The young crown princess turned to look at Ian in bewilderment. "What are you talking about? Stop pretending." Ian was about to explode from anger. How could there be such a pretentious person in this world? If the crown princess had said earlier that she wanted a bid for the prolongation pill, I wouldn't have dared to compete with you. But you didn't say. How would I know? Arbor stuck out a small hand to stop her chattering. "Oh, it was you who wanted to bid for the prolongation pill. No wonder your voice sounded so familiar. Ian, did I freaking run into 18 lifetimes of bloody misfortune? This crazy crown princess, could it be that she found her voice familiar, so she started bidding along with her?" Mo Lien smiled faintly as he led his young crown princess downstairs. They didn't gather at the venue, but headed straight for the tightly shut main entrance. Several guards from the House of Treasures who were going downstairs with them quickly stopped them and said sternly, "Everyone, you cannot go out right now. Our House of Treasures has been burgled, and the senior manager is currently searching for the thief. So, ridiculous." Hui Feng took a step forward and shouted angrily, "What kind of status does His Highness have? Why would he fancy the few pieces of scrap metal from your House of Treasures? Get out of the way. Be careful, so as to have no eyes." Crown Prince Mo stood on the side, while holding his young Crown Prince consort's hand. Both of them simultaneously put on an aloof face. Just like that, he looked at the guards of the House of Treasures with an indifferent expression. In fact, this expression of indifference was quite useful. When you don't want to reveal your inner thoughts, when you want to act pretentious and unfathomable, you can use a faint smile to cover it up. Situ, he silently lowered his head as he watched from the side, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. Needless to say, the crown prince had just accompanied his wife to go to someone's storeroom and looted everything. This wasn't absurd at all. Commandery Princess In pulled her maidservant along as she hastily chased after the crown prince's party. She did not want to stay in this place for another minute. "It's fine, Miss Xuan." The purple-clothed woman consoled her. "It's just a small problem. We will be able to leave very soon." Commandery Princess Ian smiled at her. "Miss Xian, don't worry. I will find you very soon and return the 20,000 mystic currency to you. Miss Shuin, you and I are friends, so these are all trivial matters. The purple-clothed woman explained with a smile. Nowadays, the price of goods has skyrocketed. In the past, 10 pieces of high-quality magnetite of good quality could buy half a city. Now, Sai, it's not even enough to buy 30 days' worth of food. Moreover, it's such a precious prolongation pill. Chapter 12:16. Commandery Princess In felt a bit better when she recalled how precious the prolongation pill was. When she looked up, she saw a group of people surrounding the House of Treasure senior manager as that middle-aged fatty strode over. The middle-aged fat man glanced at them suspiciously. He stepped forward and cupped his hands politely. You are. This is His Highness the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. Huifeng explained with a taut face. These two are the Duan clan's fourth young master and the Heavenly Dao sect's young sect master. When the middle-aged fatty heard this, he nearly broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly rubbed his hands together and said, I did not know that your highness had graced us with your presence. Young sect master, fourth young master Duan, excuse me. Something happened to our house of treasures tonight. I don't know which thief snuck into our warehouse and looted everything. That's why we have neglected everyone. I hope you don't blame us. Emol Yin waved her hand at him. Can we leave now? Of course, of course. How would this middle-aged fatty dare to stop them? He immediately had someone open the door and let them out. Commandery Princess Ian quickly followed after them. When she saw someone obstructing them, she berated, How dare you? We are with His Highness. Emol Yin and the others didn't pay attention to her and boarded the carriage without consulting her. The middle-aged manager gave them a look and blocked Ian's group of four. That fatty strode forward with a chuckle. Arbor sat inside the carriage and looked through the curtain. She then glanced at Lu Yexin, who was sitting in the corner of the carriage, and asked aloofly, What are you waiting for? Everyone looked at Arbor in confusion, unable to understand what he was saying to Lu Yexin at this time. Yet Lu Yexin's gaze shifted, and she looked up at Arbor with a questioning gaze. Are you really going to make a move? Nonsense. Xiao Mu grumpily glared at her. A man is not a man if he does not take revenge. Are you going to take revenge or not? Lu Yexin clenched her fists. She considered it for less than a second before nodding vigorously. She lifted the carriage curtain with a whoosh and was met with the fatty's slightly stiff face. She looked at the fat man coldly and threw a round object at him. The corners of Arbor's mouth curled up. He raised his hand and shot out several streams of mist. Together with a layer of earth wall, the mist rolled and built a high wall around the fat manager. In an instant, there was a loud bang. All the brothers and sisters in the carriage looked at this sudden situation with a stupefied expression. The earth quaked, and the mountains swayed for an instant. With the explosive force of the core-ravaged thunder, the fat manager and the two lackeys beside him were all destroyed to the point that not a trace of hair could be seen. Ha ha! Lu Yexin suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. The depression in her chest was swept away, and she threw her head back and laughed. It's been a long time since I felt so good. Since when did he become more and more aggrieved by the day? Lu Yexin laughed so hard that tears rolled down her cheeks. Like an idiot, Arbor picked up a walnut and threw it at her head. Let's go. Liang Qingqing couldn't resist laughing. She walked up and rubbed Arbor's expressionless face in passing. Little junior sister, you're clearly helping junior sister Lu vent her anger, yet you're still putting on such a thunder of face. You really make people worry to death. You don't say anything and always make people guess blindly. Right, little junior sister, you have to change your bad habit of talking for the entire day. Situ quickly expressed his approval. What do you know? Duan Yu irritably interrupted them and sneered. Aren't you tired of talking too much? Chapter 12:17. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Suddenly, they burst into laughter. Arbor snorted and had someone lower the curtain. Then, a dozen burly men rushed out of the House of Treasures, looking in horror at the several meters deep crater that had been blasted open by the core-ravaging thunder. Due to the water mist and earth walls, this was only a small-scale explosion that didn't spread to other places. But this loud noise was enough to shake the entire Mo kingdom capital. The people inside the House of Treasures surged out like a tide. Without that fatty manager's command, the thugs were like ants on a hot pan, completely without a backbone. They could only look on helplessly as the customers rushed out of the House of Treasures entrance and fled in all directions. After Arbor and the others quietly left. Not long after, the son of the great king, who had secretly gone out, was welcomed into the House of Treasures' back door with a dark expression. When the crown prince received the news, he merely glanced at it indifferently before casually erasing the message on the Jade Messenger talisman. He turned his head and couldn't help but sigh softly when he saw the little fellow busily refining medicine under the light. Look at how anxious this little thing was. In reality, his poison simply couldn't erupt that quickly. He could still suppress it for a short period of time. Less than an hour later, Arbor stopped and ran to his side, muttering, "I just knew that primary rank herbs were still lacking. I'm lacking 2 kinds of primary rank herbs. Take this antidote pill first. Tomorrow, we'll go to the Mystic Beast Forest and buy the primary rank herbs in Captain's possession. Then, we'll have gathered all the herbs needed to cure the devil grass's poison. What are you busy with? Sleep first." Emolien scooped her up by the waist and carried her to the bed. Emolien looked down at her and pursed his lips. "You didn't remember me for a few days before. At that time, you called me Lord Husband." Arbor rolled her eyes irritably at him. "Liar. I don't even remember you. So why would I still call you Lord Husband?" Emolien. "Can't say." Cough. Emolien put her on the bed and sat sideways on the bed. He raised his hand to tidy her hair. "Because I told you that my name is Hubby. Arbor, do I know that you've tricked me like this? Aren't I very smart?" He leaned over to look at her and said with a smile, "Call me that again now." The little fellow's face was slightly flushed. She wanted to stretch out her little paw to push his face away, but when she saw his expectant eyes looking at her, she couldn't help but feel a little soft-hearted. My husband." She moved her little mouth, and just as she called out, she saw that bastard come up to her, hugged her, and covered her little mouth. He kissed her for a long time and really took away all the air in her mouth. How infuriating. Wasn't it just calling him husband? You're such a beast. Is it okay for you to do this? "Jojo, I feel terrible," he said, looking at her piteously. You feel terrible." My ass. She was the one who felt terrible because he had taken away all her breath. Her chest hurt from holding it in. "Yeah, everywhere feels terrible. There, my whole body feels terrible." He leaned on her and kept rubbing against her until she started to feel terrible too. Her heart was thumping uncontrollably. She hated him to death. "Jojo, when I kissed you before, you didn't have any reaction at all." Emolien winked at her. "We don't have much experience. Shouldn't we practice more?" Chapter 12:18. As he spoke, his handsome face grew bigger and bigger in front of her. It looked like he was about to kiss her again. Arbor quickly reached out and slapped his face. "Shut up." He looked at her innocently. "I didn't say anything." Looking at his innocent expression, Arbor couldn't help but laugh. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck. She suddenly pinned him down and hugged him as though he was Emolien bolster. She pecked his chin with a stoic expression. "Time to sleep. See you tomorrow, my Lien." The man who had wanted to flirt with his wife instantly froze. He lay there stiffly for a moment. His body moved slightly, and he said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Jojo." The little fellow didn't respond. "Baby, hurry and get up." Arbor didn't make a sound. Her breathing also became gentle and soft. It was obvious that she had fallen asleep. Emolien. You can actually fall asleep in less than 3 seconds while lying on top of me. You. How infuriating. Wasn't he beautiful and charming enough? Why did this unromantic little girl fall asleep in less than 3 seconds while lying in front of him? That he really wanted to bite her, but he was worried that he would disturb her sleep. Emolien looked at this annoying little thing with a worried expression. He hugged her waist and rubbed against her soft body. He sighed faintly. "What am I supposed to do with you?" He let his imagination run wild for most of the night. He didn't know when he fell asleep. When he opened his eyes, he saw the little fellow staring at him with a pair of big, longan-shaped eyes. Her eyes were round and round, as though she was looking at a monster. "Why are you here?" When Yin heard this, he couldn't help but get angry. He directly pulled her soft and small body into his embrace and nibbled on her slightly puffed-up cheeks. Ask yourself. Arbor recalled that she had boldly pounced on him yesterday and pinned him down. She had hugged him like a bolster for the entire night, but she would never admit it. The little fellow blinked and slapped his hand away. She turned over and was about to sit up as she muttered, "What are you asking me about? All right, we should get up and set off." Suddenly, Arbor felt dizzy. He opened his eyes and looked strangely at the man who suddenly appeared above him. "Why are you pressing down on me? You've been on top of me the whole night. Why can't I do it for a while?" Yin gritted her teeth and pointed at her eyes. "Look." Yes. Yin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What do you mean, look good? I'm asking you to look at me. Do you know that I have dark circles under my eyes? I couldn't sleep well last night because you were on top of me." Arbor looked at him guiltily and rubbed his head. All right. I'll let you sleep well tonight." And then, what then? Arbor's eyes fluttered as he looked around. His small hand nudged his body. "It's getting late. We still have to set off for that small base in the Mystic Beast Forest in a while. I want you to press me back." Arbor's mouth twitched. He hugged him and shouted, No way. It's fine if you don't press me back, but you have to kiss me 3 times." Bargaining, Arbor rolled his eyes at him and quickly leaned over to kiss his cheek. "We're done kissing. Get up." Prince Mo looked at him with dissatisfaction. "Perfunctory. This time doesn't count. You still owe me 3 kisses. I'll make them all up next time." Chapter 12:19. She kissed him for nothing. Jojo was furious. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have kissed him just now. Regardless of whether she kissed him or not, she still had to make up for it 3 times. Prince Mo read the meaning in her eyes and almost laughed out loud. He hugged her and swayed her small body as he laughed. "Jojo, you're so cute." Humph. He carried her off the bed and personally picked out clothes for her to wear. When he bent down to help her put on her shoes, Xiao Yao's voice came from outside. Pulling the little fellow up from the bed, Yin turned around and called out, "Come in. We'll go after breakfast." He patted her head and turned to head to the side chamber to change his clothes. His clothes were wrinkled for being pressed down by this little rascal for an entire night. He wouldn't be able to see anyone if he didn't change. His mental state was completely different on this trip to the Mystic Beast Forest. Previously, when he sent her to the Mystic Beast Forest alone, Prince Mo was all sorts of discomfort and disdain that they would be gone for too long. Now that the two of them were going together, he was melancholy again. His mother-in-law had only given them a 4-day deadline, and they could only go back and forth for 4 days. This trip was too short. During breakfast, Prince Mo secretly told his wife something. "Do you know who owns that house of treasures?" "Whose?" Arbor bit on a steamed bun and glanced at him curiously. Seeing his secretive expression, she couldn't help but whisper, "It can't be opened by one of your brothers, right?" "You guessed right." Yin was instantly speechless. "Why are you so smart? Children can't be so smart." "Humph, you're the child. The person behind this house of treasures is Brother Great King." Yin fed her a mouthful of porridge before taking a spoonful himself. "Are you a bit surprised? He's always been poor, but he actually has the money to open a house of treasures this time." Prince Mo shifted his stool towards Arbor and whispered to her, "There's someone behind him." Arbor also lowered his voice. Who could it be? For him to be able to receive such a large amount of wealth in such a short period of time, it naturally wouldn't have appeared out of thin air. There must be a source. We'll know once we check. Arbor nodded. "I'll leave it to you." She wasn't the least bit interested in investigating things. Lazy, Yin stretched out her finger to tease her in amusement. She seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be extremely puzzled. "Why were you so diligent in cultivating before? I will never say it in this lifetime." Embarrassing that Yin supported her chin with one hand and grinned at her. "Jojo, how do we get there? There are only 4 days to go back and forth. Of course, we'll let your stinky golden dragon take us there. The sooner the better." "You're the arrogant one," Yin Chi said angrily. Arbor rolled up his sleeves. Come out. Okay. I'll let him take us there later. Emolien helplessly took her little hand. She was used to these two little fellows fighting each other whenever they met. Can I beat him now? Arbor turned to ask Emolien. Emolien glanced at his wife and shook his head sincerely. The little fellow immediately stood up angrily. Forget it then. Yin Qi's angry voice sounded. You're planning to beat me up whenever you can beat me, right? That's right. You, little Emo, I'm going to die from anger. Okay, don't be angry. Emolien was speechless. She coughed softly and pulled Arbor out. Little 7, come out. Chapter 1220. A dragon tore through the air and appeared in front of them. It angrily swung its tail and pointed its butt at them. Look at him. Arbor grabbed Emolien's hand and gritted her teeth. This stinky dragon. Emolien didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she pulled her to her side and comforted her. All right. Little 7 might look like he's lived for hundreds or thousands of years, but he's actually still a child among the dragons. Age doesn't bring wisdom. Arbor pursed her lips. Little 7th Yin immediately turned his head and glared at her angrily. Little Emo. Okay. Emolien shook her head in amusement as she looked at these two little rascals who couldn't get along with each other. She reached out and carried Arbor, then flew up and landed steadily on the golden dragon's back. She raised a hand to pat Little 7's head. Let's go, Little 7. Little 7 swung his tail and darted into the clouds. Not long after the two of them left, Gong Chong and hurried over and grabbed Xiao 11Z at the Eastern Palace's entrance. He asked, "Where's His Highness?" His Highness just left. Xiao 11Z looked at him in surprise. Manager Gong, what's the matter? The great king summoned him for an urgent matter. His Highness won't be back for 4 days. Why don't you write a letter, and I'll find someone to deliver it to His Highness. Gong Chong and shook his head. Forget it. 4 days isn't a long time. Let's wait for His Highness to come back. Xiao 11Z nodded obediently. Gong Chong glanced at him and asked with a benevolent smile, Your Highness went out with the crown, Prince Consort? Xiao 11Z nodded vigorously. Yes. Gong Chong sighed deeply. Xiao 11Z wanted to ask him why he sighed, but he didn't dare to. After watching Gong Chong leave, Xiao 11Z rubbed the back of his head, feeling a little confused. Emolien naturally didn't know that the great king had come looking for him right after he ran away with the beauty. The two of them rushed towards the mystic beast forest, and the little golden dragon's speed was naturally fast. Compared to when he rode the eagle to the mystic beast forest in Arbor, the time taken was shortened by at least 2/3. Seeing that Little Thunder's footwork was pretty good, Xiaomu didn't make things difficult for Yin Xiaoqi's friend after that. The two of them set off early in the morning and stopped not far from the outskirts of the small base late at night. Seeing that it was getting late, and the base's gate was already closed, the two of them started a fire on the spot, planning to make do for the night. Are you cold? Arbor shook his head and leaned on her, feeling a little sleepy. It's spring. How can still be cold? With that, she curled up in his arms and said, Looks like you won't be able to sleep well tonight. Emolien chuckled softly, hugged her, and said softly, You still owe me 3 kisses. Sleep after kissing. No. Arbor drowsily spat out these 2 words, and it didn't take long for her to fall asleep. Emolien helplessly shook his head and took out a blanket from his inner world to cover her. He muttered to himself, She falls asleep so quickly every time. I wonder if it's on purpose. The next morning, Arbor opened her eyes and sat up. She dropped the blanket draped over her and glanced sideways. She saw that he was busy cooking a pot with his back to her. What are you cooking? You're awake. Emolien turned around and glanced at her with a smile. You're in luck. I stewed ginseng black-bone chicken porridge for you today. Come and try it. It's been cooking for a long time. Chapter 1221. Arbor hurriedly ran over and sat on a rock beside him. She took a spoon and poked into the pot. After taking a bite, her eyes lit up. It's delicious. Drink 2 more bowls. Emolien reached out and pinched her little cheeks. I have to get you back. Arbor drank a few mouthfuls of porridge and glanced at him. She raised her hand to wipe her face. How am I thinner? I'm about the same as before. Emolian laughed and shook his head. You're too different. Your little chin used to be round, but now it's pointy. Chamu stuck out her tongue at him and scooped up another small bowl. However, before she could take a sip, she saw an extremely fast figure flitting past them. The person reached out and scooped up the boiling pot of porridge into his arms, laughing loudly as he exclaimed, "Oh my, it smells so good. This old man hasn't had breakfast yet." Arbor held a small spoon and stared blankly at the little old man who suddenly appeared in front of her. The old man wasn't tall and was chubby. He wore a minister's hat on his head and a linen robe on his body. There was a straw rope tied around his waist. He looked a little out of place. Emolian glanced at the old man. When Arbor didn't see him, his face darkened slightly. "Who are you? Why are you stealing our food?" Arbor stood up with the spoon and looked at the old man in confusion. The old man had already started drinking. He didn't even mind the heat. He blew on the porridge like a reincarnated hungry ghost. He finished the big pot of porridge in no time. Light up. After he was done, his beady eyes were still staring at the half bowl in Arbor's hand. Arbor instinctively hugged her small bowl and couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" "Little girl, I'll make a bet with you. If you can protect that bowl of porridge in your hand, this old man will agree to one of your requests." With that, he flashed in front of her and reached out to grab the bowl of porridge in her hand. "Jojo, use the talisman." Whoosh! Arbor threw out a teleport talisman and instantly moved hundreds of meters away. The old man said with a laugh. "Little girl, you have some tricks up your sleeve." He had already appeared behind her and pressed down on her head. What a fast movement and speed. As Arbor threw out a teleportation talisman, he threw out 60 binding talismans to trap the old man. In just a few breaths of time, the old man laughed and broke out of the binding glyph formation. Amazing, amazing. He's not inferior to Mu Xingqian, who's known as the #1 genius of the talisman aristocratic family in the Divine Prefecture. While the old man was smiling, his moves were extremely fast. Every attack was aimed at the bowl in Arbor's small hand. The old man was about to snatch the bowl from her hands. In her panic, Darling Xiao threw her head back and gulped down the small bowl of porridge. After she was done, she threw the bowl on the ground and said angrily, "You didn't get it." The old man stopped with a dumbfounded expression. He stared blankly at her for a few seconds before suddenly laughing out loud. Emolian saw this from the side, and the corner of her mouth couldn't help but curl into a smile. Okay. This old man is willing to accept his loss. What request do you want me to agree to? Emolian quickly moved to Arbor's side, tugged at her small hand, and whispered a few words to her. Arbor looked at Emolian blankly before replying. "My request is that you must unconditionally stand by my side and support me in the future." Actually, Arbor was also puzzled. She didn't understand why Emolian would say this to her. Chapter 1222. The old man glanced at Prince Emo and snorted. He found a rock and sat down. You're obedient. You just said what I asked you to say. Sly little girl." The old man rubbed his round belly before turning to look at Emolian. He said with a spurious smile, "All right then, this old man isn't someone who can't afford to lose. All right, do you two have any dry food? Give it to me." Although he had a lot of food with him, he didn't know how to cook. They had been hungry for 2 days. How miserable! Emolian glanced at him and threw him a bag of wheat biscuits. He pulled his wife and walked towards the small base. The old man stood behind the two of them and looked at them meaningfully. He opened the bag and took a bite out of it. "Alas, I didn't expect that I, the third elder of the Divine Lands Presbyterian Academy, would be reduced to eating dry food in this shabby place," he muttered as he followed the two of them. He followed them at a steady pace, neither too far nor too close. Arbor felt that the old man didn't leave. She turned to look at him and tugged at Emolian's hand. "Who is this old man? Why does he keep following us?" "Ignore him," Emolian said lightly. He held her little hand and walked into the base openly. There was an idiot who wanted to make him pay the fee. Yes, he was thrown out by him. You should be massaging his old waist in the corner now. Arbor was familiar with this adventurer base. She pulled Yin all the way to the Mission Distribution Center. She had made an appointment with the Giant Bear Squad to buy all the primary herbs they dug up a month later. But it had been 2 or 3 days since the appointed date. She wondered if they were anxious. Arbor and Yin walked to the Mission Distribution Center hand in hand. The closer they got to the place, the more crowded it was. There were many people there, and they were making a lot of noise. The two couldn't squeeze in at first. They stood outside the crowd and couldn't see the sign of the Mission Distribution Center. Arbor heard the voice of Gao Sheng, the captain of the Giant Bear Squad, from the crowd. We're not obstructing anyone. The herbs are piled up in the open space. No one usually goes there. Why are they taking up space? TSK, Captain Gao, you must be joking. That pile of herbs of yours is occupying the latrine pit, but not shitting. How many days have they been there? You're really looking forward to that little girl coming to collect those medicinal herbs. Ha 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 ha. The captain of the Proud Hawk Squad laughed mockingly at Gao Sheng as he hugged a gorgeous woman. Maybe he's just teasing you. That's right. 1 cultivation coin for a low-level herb. How is that possible? Although low-grade medicinal herbs also had the word medicine in them, to put it bluntly, they were really just grass. Ha 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 ha. There's so many in the Mystic Beast Forest, and you can have as many as you want. If you really purchase them like this, then the young lady's hard-earned capital will be gone. I think that girl is a liar. She won't come again. You're talking nonsense. Sister Gu shouted angrily. You're not her, so why are you making wild guesses about her? Maybe Miss Xiao was delayed for a few days because of something. Delayed? Ha ha. Only someone as naive as you would believe it. Maybe she took a peek and saw that you guys actually picked over 200,000 primary herbs. She was scared witless by your extravagance and ran away. Everyone roared with laughter. Chapter 12:23. Gao Sheng's face flushed slightly red. He opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. Could it be that the Proud Eagle Squad's captain's crow's beak was spot on? Miss Xiao saw that they greedily plucked over 200,000 stalks of medicinal herbs and was so scared that she didn't want to come. But when they were plucking back then, they only thought that the more they plucked, the better. In fact, they didn't have to charge her 1 mystic coin per stalk. The plump woman, Hua Gu, spat at the Proud Eagle Squad's captain. Scram, scram, scram. What does it have to do with you? This is our huge bear squad's business. You idle people really have too much free time. Isn't it because your trash piled up in the open space is in the way? That's right. If you don't take care of it by today, we'll have to help you take care of it. Ha ha! Everyone's mocking voices rang out, and they all looked at Captain Gao Sheng as if they were watching a good show. Gao Sheng gritted his teeth. You don't need to take care of it. We can do it ourselves. Captain. Suddenly, a melodious voice that seemed like the sound of nature landed in the ears of the huge bear squad members. They all turned their heads in disbelief, only to see a pair of exquisitely carved jade people standing outside the crowd. Their brows were drawn together like a painting as they stared fixedly at them. Sis Ji's eyes lit up when she looked over. Little Xiao. The little girl forcefully kicked aside the Proud Eagle Squad members blocking her way and extended a small paw, waving at them in a friendly manner. Gao Sheng's tears were about to fall. This little grand aunt finally appeared. Arbor trotted all the way to Captain Gao and extended a small paw. He stood on his tiptoes and patted Captain Gao's shoulder. Captain, I'm late. I was delayed by something earlier. You've been waiting for a long time. Not long, not long. Gao Sheng's current mood was like a completely different person from his earlier gloomy mood. Now, he was so happy that he wanted to fly. Captain, the little fellow looked up at him, but before she could speak, she was stopped by 2 slightly pleasantly surprised voices. Little Xiao. Sis. Little Sixth Zheng and Princess Xiaomi ran over one after the other and circled around her, unable to restrain their joy. We finally waited for you. Ah. Arbor looked at the 2 of them, a trace of embarrassment appearing on his little face. You've been waiting for me here? These 2 slow-witted children. If she hadn't thought of returning to this small adventurer base in the Mystic Beast Forest, Then wouldn't they have been weathered from waiting? Yes. The two nodded at the same time. Xiaomi's personal bodyguard, Gongsun Lai, slowly walked over. Hearing this, he crossed his arms and said, Princess Mi said that you will definitely come out from the forest. No matter what, I have to stay here and wait for you. Sorry for making you guys worry, Arbor said softly. It's good to see that you're fine, Xiaomi said with a smile. Then, she lowered her voice and leaned closer to her. All right, why did I hear that you picked up a phoenix egg? Is that true? Yeah, Arbor nodded. In the next instant, Xiaomi slapped him on the shoulder. Wow, your luck is too good. Where did you find it? Arbor pinched her sleeve. You might not believe it, but when I was walking on the road, it suddenly fell from the sky. Princess Xiaomi and Gongsun Lai's bodyguard chuckled at the same time. What the fuck? This was really unbelievable. Chapter 1224. Arbor speechlessly glanced at Princess Mi. I'll tell you about this later. After speaking, she turned to Gao Sheng and crisply called out, Captain. Captain Gao's face was overwhelmed by the favor. He always felt that every time the little girl called him Captain, it was especially familiar. Captain Little Six, and I want to join. Captain Gao, has the matter been resolved? A gentle voice came from the back of the group. When Arbor heard this nightmarish voice, the expression on her small face suddenly changed greatly. She abruptly turned her head and stared fixedly at the white-robed man walking over like a wolf. His entire body was covered in white clothes, making him appear very noble and unsullied. His gentle, smiling face was brimming with a warm aura. No matter who saw it, they would feel that this person was very amiable and would be happy to get close to him. Heh, Fan Xioa, her big brother next door. Why are you here? A thin vine shot out from Arbor's sleeves and directly whipped toward Fan Xioa's face without any warning. Fan Xioa felt all the hair on his body stand on end, and he leaned to the side to avoid the attack. With a loud bang, the vine whip landed on a stool, directly whipping the stool into pieces. Arbor's figure had already rushed over like a little leopard. The wood spirit in her hand glowed with a faint green light, and she directly slapped it toward Fan Xioa's face. This slap was too heavy, and Fan Xioa felt that he might be disfigured by the little girl. He hurriedly activated a defensive mystic weapon to block it. As he dodged, he picked up a long sword and used it to block the little girl's wild bombardment of attacks. The little girl didn't fight in any order. Most of the time, she directly attacked with her small fists. After he dodged 2 or 3 steps, she suddenly stopped and actually smiled at him. This smile made all the hair on Fan Xioa's body stand on end. Previously, during the banquet, she had smiled at him like this and then used her killer move. Sure enough, when the little girl opened her hand, 5 streams of water drilled out from her palm and suddenly turned into 5 long snakes, rushing toward Fan Xioa without stopping. Fan Xioa turned pale with fright and immediately mobilized all the mystic energy in his body to open a defensive barrier. When the 5 streams of water hit the outer defensive barrier, the defensive barrier suddenly collapsed. Fortunately, he had used his own cultivation to form a defensive barrier, and the remaining water spirit energy did not immediately break his defense when it hit the defensive barrier. Fan Xioa gripped the sword in his hand and covered it with a wave of mystic energy. He swept it across and drew a half-arc bang. The 5 streams of water immediately exploded. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief, he suddenly felt the soil under his feet loosen. His entire body was abruptly grabbed by a giant hand that flipped out from under the soil. He lowered his head in fear and looked down. The giant hand, made of mud, rolled up and slapped down on his head. Boom! This slap directly made Fan Xioa spit out a mouthful of old blood. With a bang, he fell flat on his face and ate a mouthful of mud. Everyone present was silent and didn't make the slightest bit of sound. However, their eyes were filled with disbelief as they stared blankly at the little girl in front of them. They were very clear about the strength of the Fan family's young master, but they didn't expect that he would be so easily slapped to the ground by the little girl. Chapter 1225. Without waiting for the Fan family members to rush forward, Arbor appeared in front of Fan Shioha in a flash. The startled swan dagger instantly flew out of her conscious. With just a wisp of her spiritual perception, she quickly pressed it against Fan Shioha's neck. Still as useless as ever, Arbor paced 2 steps in front of him and glanced sideways at the few Fan family members who wanted to rush forward. She waved her hand at them and said, "If you dare to come forward, I'll slit open his neck right now and make him spit out a lot of blood." The few Fan family members stared blankly at the young lady in front of them. They only felt that her current expression carried a hint of terror amidst her naivety. Even a little inexplicably morbid, that she would do as she said. Everyone's hearts shrank. Fan Xiaoming led the others to stand far away. He cupped his hands toward Arbor and said, "Crown Princess, how has my brother offended you?" Arbor glanced at him and said mildly, "Him? How has he offended me?" Fan Xiaoming, "Why does he feel like he has nothing to say?" Cough, cough, cough. Fan Xia, who was sprawled on the ground and beaten up by Crown Princess Dahai again, stared at Arbor with a slightly changed expression. Why did you? Why?" Whoosh. The sharp, startled swan dagger drew a red line of blood on Fan Xiao's neck. If it had been a little deeper, his head might have fallen off his neck. Fan Xiaoha was greatly alarmed, but he still maintained a big, brotherly smile on his face. Only because he was nervous, his fingers were already curled up. "Crown Princess." Imo Yin quickly walked to Arbor's side and pulled her into her arms, stroking the back of her head to comfort her. The desolate aura that this child exuded just now was heart-wrenching. There must be something wrong with this Fan Xioha. Otherwise, Jojo would not be on the verge of losing control every time he saw him. "Fan Xioha, stay away from the huge bear squad. Never step foot in their midst. Otherwise, you will die without a burial ground. Do you understand?" Xiaomu turned her ice, cold small face over and indifferently gazed at that big brother next door. Fan Xiao's heart suddenly shrank, but he still maintained a trace of calmness on the surface. He didn't dare to nod because there was still a startled swan dagger at his neck. "Crown Princess, you must have misunderstood something. I'm here today to ask the giant bear squad for a small mission. Are all of you from the Fan clan good-for-nothings?" Arbor looked at him coldly. "You're not allowed to ask the giant bear squad for help. Withdraw your bullshit mission immediately. Also, get out of my sight immediately. I don't want to see you." This was really something that he didn't want to see. Fan Xiao's hands, which were pressed against the side of his robe, clenched tightly and revealed a somewhat embarrassed smile. "The Crown Princess has given a clear order. Xiaoha does not dare to disobey." After saying that, he stiffened his neck and looked at the startled swan dagger at his neck from the corner of his eye. He walked stiffly to the table in the mission distribution center and quickly canceled the mission that he had just issued to the giant bear squad, paying a certain amount of penalty for breaching the contract. Arbor gave a rare, faint smile. "That's good. In the future, don't let me see you sticking to the giant bear squad like a fly, understand? Also, take good care of your own life. I'll be coming for you very soon." Fan Xiaoha only felt that this crown princess's expression hid an infinite amount of strangeness. Chapter 12:26. Arbor wilted, and the startled swan dagger flew back to her fingers with a whoosh. With a slight turn of a sharp dagger, it disappeared into her conscious with a whoosh. Fan Xiaoming hurriedly rushed forward to support Fan Xiaoha and led the Fan family away with their tails between their legs. Xiao Mu gazed coldly in the direction they left in and didn't say anything else. Her small head twitched in Mo Yin's embrace as she looked up at him. "What is it?" Mo Yin didn't let go of her, only lowering his head to smile at her. "Are you feeling better?" Arbor nodded. After Fan Xiaoha left, she felt that the air here was much better. Every time she saw him, she would constantly recall that dark past. It was truly unbearable. Of course, she felt that this unbearable feeling would be resolved very quickly. Before she dealt with this Fan Xiaoha, she had to understand one thing. Was this Fan Xiaoha related to that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture chief? Her previous pitiful marionette-like life was mostly bestowed upon her by the Shantian Prefecture's prefecture chief. She suspected that it was because she had opened her mystic meridians at the age of 16 that the Shantian Prefecture's prefecture chief sent Fan Xioha, this smiling big brother, to her side. Thinking of this, darling Qiao couldn't help but shiver. Could it be like this? Or was she overthinking it? Jojo, can't you tell me? Immerse Yin frowned slightly, reached out to hug her slender waist, and lowered his head to look at her. I can't tell you about Fan Xioha. Xiaomu gazed at him in a daze. Her pair of slightly morbid, pitch-black eyes that resembled an ancient well flickered, and she lowered her small head and said, I can say it. Later, I'll tell you all about the enmity between me and Fan Xioha. Okay? Okay. While Immerse Yin was pleased, his mood was also a little heavy. Then you have to tell me about that strange old man's identity. Immerse Yin was stunned, then smiled and pinched her little face. Children shouldn't be so smart. You'll grow up faster if you're a little stupid. I'm going to be of marriageable age in half a month. I'm not a kid anymore. Arbor angrily slapped his hand away. You have to tell me. All right. Immerse Yin smiled and nodded. As long as it's something you want to know, I'll tell you anything. That's more like it. The little girl looked at him with satisfaction. She suddenly remembered that she had been interrupted by that damned Fan Xioha while she was talking to the captain. She quickly turned her little head around and said to Gao Sheng in a crisp voice, Captain, little 6, and I want to join the giant bear squad. Captain Gao was dumbfounded and flattered. He didn't know where to put his hands. Just now, the little girl's battle prowess was fully displayed. Such a strong little girl actually said that she wanted to pull her friend to join their unknown giant bear squad. What should he do? It seemed very inconceivable. Captain Gao looked at the little girl with a dumbfounded expression for a long time, then hurriedly nodded and said, Okay. Little fellow, if you want to join our giant bear squad, we naturally welcome you. It's just that. Captain Gao scratched his head and said a little embarrassedly, Our giant bear squad isn't that strong. Have you thought about it? All the members of the giant bear squad fixed their gazes on the girl for a moment. In the early morning of this day, the giant bear squad was joined by 2 amazing members. Chapter 12:27. As for Fan Xioha's group, they didn't realize that 2 yellow-spotted butterflies were tailing them the whole way after they left. After joining Huge Bear Squad, all the members surrounded the new member. Arbor and Little 6th Zheng discussed enthusiastically and welcomed her incessantly. The Proud Hawk squad members who were originally watching the excitement felt bored and wanted to disperse. Arbor suddenly shouted, Wait a minute! Were you the one who said that I was a swindler just now? Arbor suddenly stood in front of the Proud Hawk squad captain. That captain had a tanned, old face with chapped skin for being exposed to the elements. But when he saw Arbor, he couldn't help but reveal a perverted expression. He took a step forward and pressed closer instead. What? Does the little miss have some advice? What are you doing? Everyone in Huge Bear Squad surrounded her in a huff, and the leader, Captain Gao, pushed the Proud Hawk squad captain away with a slap. Stay away from our Xiao Qiao. Classmate Mo, who was blocked outside the encirclement by a group of burly Huge Bear squad members, looked at his wife across the human wall, feeling extremely stifled. What to do if his wife was too popular? I'm here to collect medicinal herbs right now. Captain, how many medicinal herbs did our squad collect during this time? There are all kinds of primary level medicinal herbs. But you don't need to give us 200,000. Here, Arbor handed Captain Gao a money pouch. Here are 100,000 high-grade mystic currency. Keep it well. What? Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at this extravagant nouveau riche squad member, simply not daring to believe their eyes. 200,000 low-grade mystic currency and 100,000 high-grade mystic currency weren't on the same level. Just like low-grade magnetite, it was only suitable for mystic cultivators level 1 to level 4 to absorb, while high-grade magnetite could be absorbed by mystic cultivators level 12 and below. As for Arbor's level 14 cultivation realm, High-grade magnetite wasn't of much use to her. What she needed were supreme-grade magnetite. Supreme-grade magnetite mines were very rare on Seacombe Planet, so the production of mystic currency generally stopped at high-grade mystic currency. The captain of the Proud Hawk squad blushed, and he muttered, "I don't know where my luck came from." He was about to leave with his tail between his legs. Siska stood in front of him with her hands on her hips. "Hey, are you going to swallow all the words you said to slander Xiao Xiao into your stomach? Do you see that? Xiao Xiao gave our captain 100,000 high-grade cultivation coins and told him to keep it well. Are you still calling her a liar now? Liar your sister. Have you ever seen a swindler pay a deposit? Fine, fine. Let's go." The captain of the Proud Eagle squad felt that he was in the wrong. He led his squad past the crowd and hurriedly ran away. Sister Gus sneered and scolded him for being a coward. Then she ran to Arbor and happily said, "Xiao Xiao, there are so many medicinal herbs. Is it to help you transport them home?" "No need, I'll collect it myself." She simply took a new ebony purple storage talisman and followed Captain Gao and the others to an open space before throwing all the primary grade medicinal herbs inside. "I'll just take some time to slowly organize them," Arbor thought to herself. She turned and nodded her small head at them. "Thank you all very much." Captain Gao and the others repeatedly waved their hands. There was no need to thank them for this. This was what they should do in the first place. They all felt a bit embarrassed after receiving so much reward. Chapter 1228. This nouveau riche teammate was so generous, it was obvious that he was helping them. "Since there's nothing else, why don't we return to the city together tomorrow?" Captain Gao thought it was a good idea. They had been out for almost a month, and their teammates were already exhausted. They should return to the city to recuperate. Besides, they had a lot of mystic coins on hand now, and they had basic living expenses. Thus, he nodded at Arbor and said with a smile, "All right, let's return to the city together." Xiaomi ran over with a smile. "Since that's the case, Gong Sun Lai and I will return to Southern Xiao Nation first. See you in a few days." Hence, Xiao Mu nodded. "Then be careful on your way back. Don't worry, I'm very powerful." Xiaomi assumed an attacking posture. Behind her, Gong Sun Lai immediately rolled his eyes at this princess. "All right, princess, don't show off blindly. You only have that one mystic skill. It's better not to take it out and make a fool of yourself." Arbor's mouth twitched. Didn't I hear that Southern Xiao Nation's king's famous mystic skill has 18 moves in one set?" Gong Sun Lai chuckled. "What are you laughing at?" Xiaomi angrily jumped to his side and kicked him. "Cough, I'm not laughing." Gong Sun Lai held back his laughter and explained, "Each of the great king's 18 mystic skills has a name. When it comes to Princess Xiaomi, the 18 moves are combined into one, and it's just that one move. Oh, right, the first time she was tested, she even said with conviction that this is called not forgetting her roots. She started from the foundation and worked her way up step by step. The great king even praised her for her talent, and that she could take on a great responsibility and inherit the legacy of Southern Xiao Nation's royal family." Xiaomi coughed dryly and pretended to look around. She lowered her head and played with the corner of her clothes. 3 months later, the great king tested the princess for the second time and discovered that she was still using the same move. The great king's expression began to turn heavy, but he still praised her for practicing it well. She painstakingly practiced it just for this one move. "Xiaomi," the Gong Sun Lai said with a faint smile. 3 months later, the great king tested her for the third time, when she was still using that one profound skill and only knew how to use that one move to block the attacks of others. The great king fainted on the spot. Everyone laughed. Xiaomi glared at Gong Sun Lai and said, I'm just taking the essence. Do you understand? Although it's only one move, it doesn't matter how many moves there are, only how good they are." Sister Gu said mockingly, "I didn't expect the renowned great king of Southern Xiao Kingdom to impart to you a set of 18 mystic skills. You actually wasted such a precious treasure?" Xiaomi angrily stomped her feet. "What are you laughing at? He's already practicing diligently, and he's even combining the 18 moves into one, extracting the essence and discarding the dregs. When Arbor heard this, he actually nodded his head in agreement. That's right, the number of profound skills has never been a factor. It's only a matter of how deep one's comprehension is. If I can combine the 18 moves into one move, then it will definitely be the best of the best. It will definitely be very powerful. Everyone was speechless. Ha ha ha. Gong Sun Lai grinned and nodded. She's so freaking powerful that she can't even beat a level 5 Mystic Cultivator who's one level lower than her. What was he supposed to do about this? Arbor patted her shoulder. Continue practicing. You can do it. When you master the 18 moves into one, you'll definitely be unrivaled. The background music strangely turned into ha 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 ha. Chapter 1229. After parting ways with the princess of the southern Xiao kingdom, darling Xiao still followed beside Yin with a strange expression and asked, "Why can't they stop laughing? Is it very funny?" Yin hugged her small body with a smile and nodded. "It's funny." Darling Xiao was unconvinced. "I've only learned one type of archery technique, and there were originally 5 different archery techniques in it. Later, I mastered all of them into one type. Every time I shoot an arrow, the time limit can be shortened by at least 2/3. You even comprehended an explosive arrow archery technique on your own. When we practice, we adjust the cultivation technique according to the actual situation to comprehend deeper and achieve the goal of constantly striving for perfection." "What's wrong with that? They shouldn't laugh at Xiaomi." Darling Xiao huffed. Yin was truly about to die from laughter at this darling. "Darling, she's not you." Yin pressed his forehead against hers and laughed uncontrollably. What she said about mastering through a comprehensive study is complete nonsense. She only practiced one move out of the 18 moves, and she's the type that hasn't mastered it yet. Arbor was instantly speechless. "Is that so?" Yin nodded while holding back her laughter. She looked at her serious expression and said, "Do you think everyone is like you? Seeing a cultivation technique and mastering it on your own, condensing several moves into one. These all require talent and aptitude. Normal mystic cultivators just follow the cultivation technique and mystic technique. Why would they think so much like you?" Arbor nodded, seeming to understand. "So that's how it is. Still, they shouldn't laugh at her," Arbor said with a snort. Okay. Yin glanced at her with a smile. "Jojo, let's find a place to stay and have a good night's rest. We'll leave tomorrow. In any case, it's still early." Arbor nodded. Suddenly, she heard the poison-tailed butterfly Queen Xiao Xiao softly call her by her ear. Master. "Is there news?" Arbor asked with rapt attention. "No, Master. The 2 butterflies that were sent out to scout for information were killed by someone. She couldn't enter Paradise Planet now, so she couldn't talk to Xiao Xiao face to face. Speaking of which, the 2 of them could only talk through spiritual awareness. She had asked Xiao Xiao to release those 2 yellow-spotted butterflies to keep an eye on Fan Xiuhua, but she hadn't expected him to be so cautious. But I know where they died. Does Master want to go and take a look? Very close. Yes, it's in an abandoned wooden hut outside this small base. All right, let's go and take a look." Yin had been watching her quietly. When she saw her look up at her, she smiled at her. "What's wrong? Let's go somewhere." 15 minutes later, Arbor and Yin arrived at an abandoned wooden house. When he pushed the door open and entered, there was no one around. Yin narrowed her eyes. There was the aura of a great spiritual master. His gaze fell on a piece of black muslin in the corner. It seemed like it was used to cover one's face. Arbor quietly looked at it. There were 2 small puffs of yellow powder on the ground. The yellow-spotted butterflies had probably been shattered by a palm strike after they were discovered. "There really is someone behind Fan Xiuhua," Arbor said coldly. "That person might even be a great spiritual master." He was extremely cautious and wouldn't even let go of the smallest butterflies. As long as he thought it was dangerous, he would destroy it with a pinch of his fingers. Arbor's eyes unconsciously outlined a middle-aged woman with a pair of gloomy eyes who covered herself behind a piece of black muslin. Chapter 12:30. She suddenly opened her eyes and involuntarily shuddered. Emolian hastily pulled her into his embrace and stroked her back soothingly. "What's wrong, Jojo?" Arbor shook her head. It's nothing. There aren't any clues left behind here. Do you want to send someone to stay here and keep watch?" Arbor nodded. "The people who came into contact with Fan Chioha should be very cautious. I reckon that this place won't appear again. Let's go back. I'm a bit tired." Seeing that her expression was indeed a bit tired, Emolian held her by the waist with heartache and drifted out of the shabby little wooden hut. After a good night's sleep, the next morning, after washing up and going out, she saw that the huge bear squad was already waiting outside. Little Sixth Zheng, dressed in black, stood nimbly and vigorously under the morning light. He turned to smile at her and nodded. Emolian grabbed his wifey's hand and cast a sidelong glance at little Sixth Zheng. When Captain Gao saw her come out, he immediately grinned, revealing his white teeth. "Xiao Xiao, are we going back by Flying Eagle?" "Okay." Arbor nodded. In any case, there were still 2 days left from the 4-day time limit that her mother had given them. They could still make it if they slowly ran back by Flying Eagle. "Okay." The squad members walked outside in a hubbub. Arbor glanced out of the corner of her eye and saw that fatty and strange old man that she had previously encountered at the base's entrance. Knitting her brows slightly, Arbor looked up at Emolian. Seeing that his expression didn't change at all, she didn't say anything either. The two hopped onto the Flying Eagle and followed the huge bear squad back to the Mo Kingdom capital. Arbor sat on the eagle's back and gently leaned against Emolian's body, watching the eagle ascend into the sky as if it was dispersing into the clouds. Only then did she organize her thoughts and say softly, "Emolian, do you believe that miracles exist in this world? I once had a very long dream. In the dream, I died once. That kind of feeling was so real that you almost couldn't believe it." Following her dreamy voice, Emolian only felt that his breathing had also stopped. He completely didn't want to understand what his Jojo had died once meant. He didn't want to think about it. As soon as he thought about it, he felt like his heart had been sliced open by a knife and was about to be cut out. He suddenly tightened his arms around her waist. "What do you want to say, Jojo? I know that corpse puppets can erupt. I know that corpse puppets can grow. I know that everything will go according to the dream I had, and it will proceed slowly and in an orderly manner. It's just I don't want to go back to that dream. Emolian, did you know? In that dream, someone had been controlling my life the entire time. I'm like a puppet on a string, a puppet without any thoughts of its own. I'm being pointed here and there by others, living my own miserable life according to other people's thoughts." Emolian's pupils contracted as she recalled the pieces of information she obtained when she searched Lu Yiji's soul. Yes, someone had always wanted her Jojo to lead a good life. Someone had always been spying on her in the dark, wanting to destroy her hard-earned happiness. Him, how could he allow it? In that dream, I was captured by Fan Chioha. He broke all my limbs. Jojo, Emolian looked at her in horror, and his hands involuntarily hugged her waist tightly. It was as if he wanted to embed her deeply into his embrace at this moment and protect her firmly. Chapter 12:31. He asked me, "Arbor, why is your inner world different from other people's? Your cultivation level is clearly lower than mine, so why is your inner world bigger than mine?" He used some small hammers and nails to hit me all day and night, studying my inner world, trying to find out my secret. Jojo, Emolian hugged her tightly, hugging her slightly trembling body. "Don't be afraid. That person will never hurt you again. Because I'm here." Emolian leaned over and rubbed his head against the back of her furry head. "I won't allow anyone to hurt a single hair on your head." Arbor turned his head and looked at him with a slightly dazed gaze. He nodded and said softly, I know that it's just a dream and it won't happen. But sometimes I feel as if those things are happening to me, as if I'm in the same situation. Every time I see those enemies in my dreams." When Xiao Mu recited the enemies in her dreams, Her eyes would flicker with specks of starlight. I just want to stab them to death, one stab at a time. I won't let Fanshoha die so easily. Arbor looked at Mo Yin and asked softly, "Don't you think that this version of me is very scary?" Mo Yin shook his head heavily. "I don't think so. I just feel that this version of you makes my heart ache." He held her little hand and pressed it against his thumping heart. He sighed softly. "Jojo, it hurts here when I hear you say this. It doesn't matter if it's a dream or not." He reached out and cupped her little face. Suddenly, he lowered his head and kissed her lightly on the lips. "All of this is in the past. It won't happen to you again. I swear that I'll use my life to protect you, my Jojo, my love." He murmured softly and hugged her in his arms. Unknowingly, the two's fingers were tightly intertwined. Even when the afternoon sun shone on them, they didn't relax at all. That fat old man is the third elder of the Academy of Elders in China. He's here to find me. Mo Yin held her little hand and said mildly, "No matter what happens in the future, Jojo, we won't be separated, okay?" Xiaomu's mind was a bit fatigued after digging into the secrets buried deep in her heart with him. She had already drifted into dreamland, as though she couldn't muster up any energy to continue the conversation. Mo Yin saw that she was about to sleep, so he put the matter of the third elder in China aside. He raised his hand to caress her smooth forehead and gently planted a kiss on it. He murmured softly, "Go to sleep. Everything will be fine when you wake up." This was a kind of mental exhaustion, not because she wanted to sleep. It was as if, after saying all this, she had walked through endless darkness and was finally pulled back from hell with great difficulty. Right now, she especially wanted to sleep comfortably under the sun and the warm sky. The cries of eagles glided by. The war eagles mounted by the huge bear squad flew one by one across the clear and comfortable sky, flying in the direction of the Mo kingdom capital. Arbor's lips curled up slightly. She nuzzled against Mo Yin's chest and adjusted to a suitable sleeping position. His heartbeat was strong and powerful, like a lullaby, urging her to fall into a defenseless sleep. It seemed that with him by her side, she felt that she could have no misgivings. Chapter 1232. His vision was hazy, as if he was looking at things through a thin layer of mist. The second young master stumbled as he parted the bead curtains strung together by golden beads. He stared blankly at a pot of begonia blooming beautifully on the shelf, somewhat lost in thought. There was a spotlessly white walnut inlaid bed in the bedroom, as well as the extremely familiar-looking brush, ink, paper, and inkstone on the desk next to it. An unfinished pot of hot tea was steaming with white smoke. Why did all of this look so familiar? Outside the beaded curtain, there seemed to be someone talking on the other side of the screen. The second young master moved closer, where he saw that hazy and familiar figure under the floating white veil. It was as if something had struck his heart. He was completely stunned. This back view. Why was this back view so similar to him? He only heard a soft voice say with a chuckle, "Exan, don't tell me you've really fallen in love with that woman and want to marry her. Don't forget who you are. Your father will never allow you to marry such a good-for-nothing woman. If you want to marry, shouldn't you marry a girl from an aristocratic family like me? That woman is of no help to you at all." When the second young master heard that woman's words through the thin white veil, he didn't know why, but his fists actually clenched tightly. "TSK," a disdainful voice sounded. The second young master suddenly widened his eyes and shot a glance in that direction like lightning. Where was he? Was he in a dream? Why did it feel like he was actually there? It was as if he was looking at himself from his previous life and talking to someone. "Xin, say something. You're thinking too much." He heard his own voice faintly transmitted through the floating white veil. His current mood became very perturbed and complicated. He took a step forward, as if wanting to rush over and stop himself from saying what he was going to say next. However, it was as if he was frozen in time and space, trapped in a small space. He could only look at them, but couldn't go forward to touch or stop them. "Don't say it. Don't say it anymore." The second young master inexplicably felt as if his heart was about to be squeezed. It was as if he was looking at himself in his previous life and realized that if he continued to say those heartless words, it would cause something irreversible. If it were you, would you marry a cripple with 4 limbs as your wife? The cold voice continued, She is just a little pet that I raised. She's a pet. Of course, I'll tease her when I'm happy. When I'm unhappy, I'll just ignore her. Just wait and see. She will obediently call me master in the future. The woman giggled. Her laughter was like a demonic sound that pierced into his ears. The second young master looked at everything in front of him with a blank expression. He saw someone push out a wooden wheelchair from behind a long cabinet. The wheelchair rolled along, as if every step was stepping on the tip of his heart, causing his eyebrows to shrink slightly in pain. He heard the woman's laughter. She said mockingly, Exine, your little pet heard what you said. He could clearly see the subtle changes in his previous life's expression under the moonlight. When he wanted to rush over and take a look at the person who had lowered her head and curled herself up in the wheelchair, it was as if he stepped on empty air and his whole body fell down. Chapter 1233. He instantly woke up from the soft couch and straightened his body. His forehead was covered in cold sweat as he stared at the pitch-black night. The thin blanket covering his stomach slowly slid to the ground. Was that a dream? Why did it feel so real? Omega Katoka got up from the soft couch. His body swayed slightly, and he almost bumped into the cabinet at the side. He pressed his swollen head and leaned against the window frame. He took a breath of the cool air outside, and his fingers couldn't help but curl up. Who was that person in the wheelchair? Why did he give him an indescribable sense of familiarity? Why did he make his heart tremble in pain? Master. Wang Cheng's voice came from below the window. He didn't seem to understand why his master would run to the window to get some fresh air in the middle of the night. The second young master didn't pay attention to him. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the distant dark void. There, it was as if there was another him coldly watching him. After Arbor returned home, under his mother's exhortations, he finally behaved properly for several days. For her coming-of-age ceremony, the entire Qiao family was as busy as a spinning top. From the guest of honor to the assistant, not a single person could be missing. She was the only one who had nothing to do. From time to time, she would check on second uncle and brother Xiao, whose injuries. Other than that, there weren't any major issues. The two of them woke up the day after she left for the small base. Now, their injuries were gradually recovering. However, whenever Zhou Yuan of the Zhou family was mentioned, they would constantly curse him as a little bastard. At that time, the Zhou family detained eldest Aunt Xiao Wenxiu and cousin Pu Rulin at home. That day, father brought Di Yuan to their house. Without saying a word, the two sides started fighting. Di Yuan perfectly threw the two 11th-layer body cultivators of the Zhou family away and gave them a good beating. Father rescued eldest aunt and her daughter. When he saw their miserable state, it was said that the siblings, uncle and nephew, hugged each other and cried on the spot. That little bastard Zhou Yuan was still cursing on the side. He actually accused cousin Pu Ruolin of not being a woman. Infuriated, father immediately asked Governor Pang Dehai to come forward and divorce cousin Pu Ruolin and Zhou Yuan on the spot. When Arbor heard his second uncle talk about this, he couldn't believe his ears. She understood her father too well. He was an indecisive and soft-hearted person. How could he possibly be so resolute as to have her cousin and Zhou Yuan divorce on the spot? She did not know where this Zhou Yuan had come from to be able to anger her father to this extent. He could also be considered talent. His cousin was also a strong-willed person. At first, his father had planned to bring the orphans and widows back to live with him, but his cousin was unwilling. Eldest aunt had a small house on Hualing Street, which was secretly bought by the mother and daughter a few years ago. After leaving the Zhou family, Pu Rulin stayed with her eldest aunt, Xiao Wenxiu, in the residential house on Hualing Street. From second uncle's words, it was likely that Zhou Yuan felt that he had been forced by his wife's uncle to divorce his wife dejectedly. After thinking about it, he felt that he had lost face. Thus, every 2 or 3 days, he would find people to cause trouble on Hualing Street, causing cousin Purulin and eldest aunt to be unable to rest in peace. Arbor watched as second uncle swallowed a pill and handed him a bowl of water to drink. Second uncle, your body has just recovered. Being angry will harm your body. Be careful. Jojo, you haven't seen that little bastard's face. If you saw it, I guarantee that you would go up and give him 2 slaps. That's right. I hate that there was someone who stopped us that day. Otherwise, I would have beaten him to death long ago. Chapter 1234. Xiao Hu also said angrily, "That's a person who can't get any more despicable." Okay. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he comforted Brother Xiao Hu, watching him swallow the pill. Then these past 2 days, that Zhou Yuan still brought people to Hualing Street to cause trouble? Arbor asked curiously. How can he not cause trouble? When can he not cause trouble? Every day, he comes barking like a mad dog. Xiao Hu angrily slammed the table. Wait until I recover. I'll definitely give him a good beating. Isn't he going to marry some Gao family's daughter? Why does he still have the time to make trouble for cousin? Arbor couldn't help but ask as he had the little girl come in and clean up the medicine bowl. That's right. That hateful guy clearly abandoned his wife to climb up the social ladder and marry that Gao family's daughter, Gao Chi-Chi. He even keeps slandering cousin for having an affair. I've never seen someone as despicable as him. From the father and son's conversation, Arbor understood that this was a big scumbag. I'll have Xiao Yao go take a look later. It's fine, you two should rest first. She herself had been grounded by her mother, and before her hairpin ceremony, her mother wouldn't allow her to go out as she pleased. However, sending that quick-witted girl, Xiao Yao, to take a look was still feasible. Xiao Hu's eyes lit up, and he casually said, "Tell Xiao Yao to be careful. Although those 2 11th layer body cultivators are injured, they're still quite powerful." Arbor turned his head and carefully looked at Brother Xiao Hu. Brother Xiao Hu, wait until you recover. I'll refine 2 mystic breakthrough pills for you to take. You can properly raise your cultivation. Xiao Hu immediately beamed with joy. Good. Little sister, I actually feel that my body has completely recovered. How about in 2 days? Arbor looked at his anxious expression and couldn't help but shake his head. Let's talk about it after you recover. There's no rush. Turning his head, he saw second uncle anxiously looking at him from the side. He couldn't help but laugh. Second uncle, I'll refine 2 body-tempering pills for you. Okay. Second uncle Xiao answered with a grin. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't envious when she saw her elder brother soar all the way to a level 9 mystic cultivator after taking 2 mystic breakthrough pills. Second uncle Xiao was grinning from ear to ear at the thought that he would be able to make some progress soon. After Arbor left the father and son's ward, he instructed Xiao Yao to check out the situation at Hualing Street. The little fellow kicked off her shoes and lay down on the couch by the window. Not long after, she saw a pale white figure come in through her window with a whoosh. He pounced on her side and kissed her affectionately. Annoying. Arbor reached out a finger and tapped the guy's forehead. Prince Imo looked at her innocently and reached out to grab her finger. Jojo, I've been chatting with those old guys for half a day after the morning court. I haven't even had a mouthful of hot porridge yet. I'm so hungry. How about having Chioju cook some noodles for you? MHM. Prince Imo nodded and leaned against her as he whined. Jojo, my head hurts. Arbor wordlessly crawled to his side and pulled his head into her embrace. She rubbed his head with her fingers. If my mother sees you like this, she'll definitely be stunned. Prince Imo nudged his head in her embrace. How am I? You look like a rascal. Imo Yin burst into laughter. She flipped over and pulled out a small rectangular box from her sleeve. This is your husband's present for you. Hurry and open it. What is it? Arbor opened the box. Chapter 1235. She saw a phoenix hairpin with flowing light lying there quietly. The hairpin was inlaid with a row of resplendent gems with a gentle luster. This is a defensive spirit tool. Arbor didn't show it on her face, but she was extremely touched inside. How long ago did this guy make this hairpin for her? He made it himself for her to wear at her coming-of-age ceremony. For your coming-of-age ceremony. Mo Yin propped up her chin with one hand and tilted her head to look at her with a smile. I'm fine with it, right? Humph. Arbor gave him a sidelong glance. He narrowed his beautiful phoenix eyes and looked at her. Wife, your husband is so good to you. Don't you plan to come over and kiss your husband? Xiao Mu placed the hairpin inside the slender box. Suddenly, she hugged his head and kissed his face with a smack. Prince Mo looked at her with silly amusement. Jojo looked good. Come here and let me hug you. Idiot. Arbor glanced at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and then pulled him up. Coincidentally, they saw the maid Chiujiu enter with a tray and curtsied to the two. Arbor took the bowl of hot noodle soup and handed it to the crown prince. Here, you can leave after eating. If mother comes later and sees you here, let's see how you explain yourself. Then I won't be able to finish it in my lifetime. Prince Mo picked up the noodles with his chopsticks and ate, sneaking glances at her. Arbor glanced at him speechlessly. All right, didn't you ask me about Sikong Fulling before? What happened to her? Prince Mo almost choked on the noodle soup. Arbor hurriedly took a brocade handkerchief from the side and wiped it. What are you doing? Nothing. Prince Mo glanced at Arbor rather guiltily and pretended to ask casually. Are you good friends with her? Of course not. I snatched her glacial star sand, so she must hate me to death in her heart. If we meet again, it's already good enough that we don't fight. If we fight, I won't go easy on her. That's good, that's good. Prince Mo grinned and picked up a few more noodles in a good mood. Arbor looked at him suspiciously. Are you hiding something from me? I'm fine. I'm fine. Mo. Lotus. Prince Mo turned his head to look at his little emperor baby and immediately admitted defeat. Okay, I'll tell you, but you can't be angry. Previously, when I flew to the Mystic Beast Forest to look for you, I couldn't find you. I smelled your scent on Sikong Fulling's body, so I captured her and brought her back. Arbor's eyes widened. Why did you capture her? Arbor glared at him angrily. Don't tell me you caught her because she's wearing too little fabric and wanted to feast your eyes on her. What? Why would you think that? Mo Yin pulled him into his embrace and said exasperatedly, Why would I look at her? She's so ugly and can't even compare to one of your toes. Why would I look at her? Arbor's eyes swiveled. Then why did you capture her? I interrogated her about your whereabouts, but she wasn't willing to say anything at first. What she said after that was all lies. So I threw her into the dungeon. After that, I forgot about her. Arbor's mouth twitched. Then she's still in the dungeon now? Should be. Prince Mo simply didn't remember this person after that. Arbor silently lit a candle for Sikong Fulling. Then when should I go see her? Chapter 1236. Wait until after your coming-of-age ceremony. Mo Yin reached out to fix her hair. It's been so long anyway. She should be used to it. Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. Could it be possible to get used to this dungeon? No need. Since I don't have anything to do tomorrow, I'll sneak out. Mother won't notice. Let little sister keep a lookout for me. Mo Yin's eyes lit up, and he immediately hugged his wife without letting go. He smiled and nodded. Okay. Then let's go swim by the lake and listen to some songs or something. Bah! Arbor pushed him and snorted. Forget about swimming by the lake and listening to songs. If a mutated fish monster suddenly appeared in the middle of the swim, that wouldn't be wonderful. How could there be such a coincidence? Mo Yin hugged his wife and dawdled. Just for a while, I'll send you home in 2 hours. Xiao Mu poked his head with her finger. You're so nosy. Just as they were talking, Xiao Yao returned. As soon as she entered, she angrily bowed to Arbor and Mo Yin. Your Highness, Crown Princess, I've already asked around. That Zhou Yuan, it's just as Second Master said. He's a big slut through and through. You want to make trouble for Miss Pooh again today. Fortunately, the guards at Master left their help to block him. The two really clashed, and Miss Pooh sprained her hand. Is it serious? It's all right. I left some medicine for Miss Pooh. It should be fine after 2 days. Xiao Yao couldn't help but say angrily. But that damn slut keeps making trouble for her. If this goes on day after day, I don't know how Miss Pooh will live. Xiao Mu creased her brows. Go over there again tomorrow. Give Pang Dehai my visitation notice, and have him go with you. Arrest all the troublemakers. After 2 or 3 times, no one will dare to make trouble again. Is this feasible, miss? Of course it's feasible. Arbor smirked and said, have Lord Pang lock them up in jail and find a few people to scare them. Okay, Xiao Yao will do it tomorrow. After Arbor sent that annoying guy away with great difficulty, he began to make the devil grass detoxification pill. The next day, Arbor brought the little girl Jolene over and had her stay in his room while he slipped out of the house. After being cooped up at home for several days, Arbor jumped over the back wall with light steps and saw Prince Imo standing there with a smile in his white casual clothes. Arbor jogged over and naturally reached out to hold his arm. I've been waiting for a long time. Not too long. Imo Yin winked at her. How is it? Did Mother find out that you slipped out? It's fine. I'll let little sister block it for me. Arbor held his hand and said, let's go to the dungeon to see Sikong Fulling first. This Sikong Fulling, I've checked her identity. She's quite special. She's actually the holy maiden of the demonic sect. Imo Yin stroked his chin and said, previously, when she was in prison, she even used a flute, and she really almost escaped. That flute is the nightmare demonic flute. Back at the small base, I almost fell for it. The two rode back to the Eastern Palace, whispering to each other as they hurried in the direction of the dungeon. Just as they stepped through the dungeon doors, they heard a heart-wrenching shout. I demand to see your boss. Why am I locked up here all day? I've told him everything. Why won't you let me go? Chapter 1237. Sikong Fulling. Arbor's voice suddenly drifted into her ears from the other side of the wooden prison door. At first, she thought she was hearing things, but in the end, when she turned to meet her gaze, she couldn't resist pouncing over. Just as she grabbed hold of 2 wooden pillars, she was struck by a bolt of lightning and retracted her hand. She shouted angrily, It really is you! Stoic face! Stoic face! Hurry and let me out! Let me out! The little stoic looked at a certain person who was hopping around angrily from across a row of prison cells. She then turned to look at the crown prince, who was strolling over slowly. Let her go! Let her go! At the crown prince's command, 2 youths in black immediately ran over. They nimbly walked to the stone wall and pressed a switch. The prison door in front of Sikong Fulling abruptly sprang open. She hastily flew out with a whoosh and stood in front of Arbor and Imo Yin. I already said I didn't grab Stoic Face. Are you sick in the head? Locking me up in the dungeon for so many days, fuck. His Highness the Crown Prince casually threw a set of black robes at Sikong Fulling's face. So ugly. Hurry and put on your clothes. It's useless to show anything when you're so ugly. The Crown Prince gruffly grabbed Arbor's small hand and turned to walk outside. Jojo, I didn't look at her. Ugly. Arbor's mouth twitched, and he suddenly felt a bit of sympathy for Sikong Fulling. She was also quite unlucky. She didn't know she was blind when she was walking, but she actually ran into a willful and unreasonable guy like the Crown Prince. Sikong Fulling cursed all 18 generations of the Mo family's ancestors and bellowed angrily behind them. Give me back my flute. Running into this pair of freaking fiends was truly her 8 lifetimes worth of bad luck. The nightmare demonic flute fluttered through the air and landed on Sikong Fulling's outstretched, fair hand with a whoosh. Simply infuriating. Stoic face, hey, stoic face. Sikong Fulling wrapped herself in that black robe and jumped in front of Arbor to block her path. Facial paralysis. Let me ask you, where exactly did you run off to after we separated that time? Do I know you that well? Why are you asking so many questions? Arbor glanced at her indifferently. Startled, Sikong Fulling curled her lips and said, You heartless stoic face. After all, we've eaten wild game, gnawed on dry rations, and spent the night together. To think that she was worried that something would happen if she wandered around the forest blindly. Sikong Fulling thought of something and suddenly waved her hand in front of her eyes. Eyes? I can see it. Arbor's face was expressionless, but his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. Could it be, during the period when she was possessed by the disaster-courting talisman, she even met Seacombe Fulling? What eyes? What happened to your eyes? Emolien heard some clues and reached out to hold Xiao Xiao's little hand, looking at her with a puzzled expression. When he caught this little fellow, Arbor had actually already recovered half of her 5 senses. I don't know what she's talking about. Arbor pulled her little face with a solemn expression. No one could tell that her little stoic expression was crumbling under her stoic face. What a joke. She wouldn't tell anyone that she had lost her 5 senses like an idiot. You don't remember? You're the one who doesn't remember. Arbor waved her little hand at her. Hurry up and leave since I'm letting you go. If you don't want to leave, then go in and stay for a while longer. Seacombe Fulling wanted to slap this stoic face to death. I'm hungry. Don't tell me you won't give me food after imprisoning me for so long. Chapter 1238. Arbor glanced at her reluctantly. Lightning immediately appeared beside her and bowed respectfully. Crown Princess, take this person to Morning Cloud Restaurant for a free meal. Arbor pointed at Seacombe Fulling. Then let her go. Don't eat too much. It's a waste of food. Seacombe Fulling. Emolien suppressed a smile and held the little fellow's hand as they walked out of the Eastern Palace's small dungeon. He looked down at her with a smile. Wifey, your husband sees that the weather is clear today. Let's go to Juzi Lake to play. Your husband will send you back. How about that? Arbor pinched his face. What if your mother-in-law finds out? Emolien pursed his lips and leaned over to whisper in her ear, if mother-in-law finds out, you'll take the blame. Xiao Mu's eyes abruptly widened. You. Emolien chuckled and held her little hand as they ran. I have to maintain a good image in front of mother-in-law, so I'll have to trouble my wifey to take the blame. Pooh. Arbor spat at him and rolled her eyes at him. Mother even asked me to stay at home and embroider a small item for you. A brocade pouch. Emolien's eyes lit up, and he looked at her happily. Jojo wants to embroider it for me? Arbor shook her head. No. Then what did you embroider? Emolien started to imagine, and she looked intoxicated. Did you embroider something on my clothes? Arbor pursed her lips. Do you think you can still wear your clothes after I embroider something on them? Don't worry. Your husband doesn't mind at all. Emolien looked at her happily. Jojo, just tell me, what did you embroider? Arbor strode forward quickly and didn't even look at him out of the corner of her eye. Jojo kept him in suspense. She definitely wanted to give her husband a big surprise. Emolien's figure flashed, and he arrived beside her. He held her small hand and said, Ciao, ciao. No matter what you embroider, I like it. Arbor glanced at him and coughed lightly. I embroidered a flower. When Emolien heard this, he immediately looked at his baby in surprise. Jojo, you can embroider. Arbor, a lotus flower. Arbor said seriously. It's for you, Emolien. He suddenly had a bad premonition. What was going on? Embroidered on the pouch? Arbor shook his head. I told you it's not a purse. Sleeves? Arbor still shook his head. Emolien asked carefully. Then where did you embroider it? Of course it's on your underwear. Arbor glanced at him with a disdainful look that said, You're so stupid. The corners of Emolien's mouth twitched. My underwear? Good. I don't have to wear it to meet people. Why are you so stupid? Arbor lifted his little hand, stood on tiptoe, and hit him hard on the head. Emolien, following his baby's downward gaze. Young master, Emo looked down and suddenly exclaimed, Underwear. Xiaomu nodded solemnly and gave a rare explanation. Mom said that she wanted to embroider a personal item for you. I thought about it and could only embroider a flower on your underwear. Emolien, you don't like it? Darling Xiao frowned and looked sternly at the man who didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Emolien hurriedly shook his head like a rattle drum. I like it very much. Chapter 1239. I embroidered a lotus flower. The little fellow emphasized again. Mother said I'm talented. It's my first time embroidering, but my embroidery looks pretty decent. Darling Xiao felt exceptionally proud when she mentioned this. Her mother also said that her needles were especially steady and that the things she embroidered were also quite exquisite. She beamed with joy and told her to practice this skill more. Her silver needles were used to kill people, not for embroidering. I embroidered a lotus flower on all of your underwear and even used different colored threads to embroider it. White, red, yellow, and green, there's everything. Do you like it? Yin suppressed her laughter and nodded seriously. She held her daughter's small hand and gazed at her with infatuation. Darling, you're so good to me. I really, really like it. Hui Feng, who was hiding in the shadows, had long squatted down from laughing. Fuck, Crown Princess, did you come here to be funny? What white, yellow, blue, and green? You probably only know how to embroider one kind of flower, the lotus flower. Right, and moreover, he felt that his master had a talent for comedy. As expected, this couple was destined to be a family of oddballs. Arbor's eyes curved, and he nodded in a slightly better mood. I knew you'd like it. When I'm skilled at embroidering, I'll embroider your outerwear. Okay. Yin was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. Embroider anywhere is fine. What color of lotus do you like? Black. I also like dark ones. Upon hearing this, Xiaomu nodded and said, Dark is good. Dark heart suits you. Yin, strange. Why does she feel like these words didn't seem to be praising her? Hui Feng, who was laughing so hard that he was slapping his thigh in the shadows, suddenly discovered a wisp of medicinal power shooting toward him. Hui Feng hastily rolled on the ground to avoid it and cried out, Wah! The medicinal power instantly pervaded his entire body. Hui Feng had a bitter expression and coughed repeatedly from choking. Your Highness, what kind of medicinal power did you use on this subordinate? Don't you like to laugh? Why don't you stay here and laugh for 4 hours? The Crown Prince said coldly and left with Xiao Qiao. He tossed the dumbfounded Hui Feng to the ground. Not long after, the secret guards of the Eastern Palace discovered that their leader was standing at the entrance of the small dungeon, laughing nonstop like a fool. The two of them left the Eastern Palace, and together they rode the same horse to Zhuzi Lake behind Fu Mountain. You really arranged a small boat. Arbor's eyes lit up. That's right. I've already said that such a spring day with hundreds of flowers blooming is especially suitable for a lake tour. Yin reached out and hugged her waist. With a leap, they jumped lightly onto a small boat. The small boat slowly drifted into the river. The lake water was dark green. A few days ago, you refused to go back with me and insisted on staying here to cultivate. Yin snorted. Do you still remember? Arbor shook her head very sincerely. Yin pinched her small face. Scoundrel, you worried me to death. Arbor took out a small bottle from her sleeve and handed it to her. This is a bottle of antidote pills. Carry it with you, and it can cure thousands of poisons. It's a new one that I made recently. For poisons on the level of the devil flower, one pill can cure them. Jojo, you were worried about me. Yin scooped the little fellow into her arms and rubbed her chin against her small head. Don't worry, I'm fine. The poison has already been cured. Arbor took the opportunity to check his pulse and turned to glance at it. Chapter 1240. You don't have anything to hide from me about your body condition, do you? She looked at the man with a serious expression, as if she would bite him to death if he dared to hide anything from her. Yin quickly shook his head and lowered his eyes as he replied, No. Arbor raised her small hand and patted Yin's head as if she was petting a puppy. That's good. Yin pulled her hand down and laughed helplessly. Jojo, in this situation, why are we talking about poison? Shouldn't we be drinking tea and chatting happily? Arbor poured him a cup of tea, then looked at him and smiled. Husband, please have some tea. Yin's eyes moved, and he reached out to take the teacup with a smile. Wife, it's rare that you don't have to cultivate, and I've thrown away all the trivial matters. Today Bam! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the lakeside, abruptly interrupting Yin's words. The two of them stood up hand in hand and looked towards the lakeside. In the distance, they saw a group of people gathered there and only saw a crowd of people moving about. Did we really encounter some fish monster? Emolian thought of what Jojo had said before and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. This little guy couldn't have jinxed it, right? It's fine, it's fine. Everyone disperse, it's fine. A young man's voice came from afar. Wow, it's an alchemist refining pills by the lakeside, and his furnace exploded. Are you an alchemist from the Alchemy Guild? Ah, it's actually someone from the Alchemy Guild? Wang Yoji. A familiar voice fell into Arbor's ears. She looked from afar and saw two familiar people from the Alchemy Guild. It's them. Emo Yin also nodded. At this time, he naturally saw the two people who had squeezed into the crowd. It was Alchemy Guild's Master Hua Feng and the old-fashioned girl, Chen Huiran. The young man who had blown up the lakeside into a deep pit, and a piece of the embankment was slightly tilted, appeared in front of everyone with a face that was blackened by the explosion. You bastard. Chen Huiran's voice drifted over with the wind. I already told you not to casually refine pills outside. The guy who blew up his furnace every day and had to refine pills every day couldn't help but throw the face of the Real Dan Alliance outside. I just happened to obtain a new pill formula in the past 2 days. All right. Let's talk when we return to the Alchemy Guild. Master Hua Feng shook his head and turned to look at Wang Yoji. It was a good thing for this young man to work hard, but after 3 years of hard work, he couldn't even make a single successful elixir, and his furnace exploded every day. Was it really suitable for such a talent to stay in the Alchemy Guild? Fortunately, the triennial alchemy competition was just around the corner. When the time came, those who couldn't even make a single pill would be kicked out of the Alchemy Guild. Grandmaster Hua, please give me another chance. The young man hugged Grandmaster Hua's leg with tears flowing down his cheeks, causing the onlookers to sigh with emotion. Being an alchemist was also quite tough. He was despised by his seniors for exploding his furnace in alchemy, and he had psychological pressure himself. Alas, he still had to take the test of the competition every 3 years. If his alchemist level didn't improve for 2 consecutive years, he might be kicked out of the Alchemy Guild. It was hard to do anything. Emo Lien pulled Arbor back to sit down and said with a bored face, "How dare he come and disturb us for no reason? He can refine pills anywhere, but he came to the lakeside. He might have his own reasons." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.